Good evening. I'll call to order this meeting of the Cotati City Council and the successor agency, the former Cotati Community Redevelopment Agency. We'll start with the roll call.
Councilmember Savage,
Here.
Councilmember Sparks,
Here.
Councilmember Harvey,
Here.
Vice Mayor Lemus,
Here.
Mayor Ford.
Here. Thanks. And that brings us to item number 2, approval of minutes and notice of waiving of reading of all resolutions and ordinances introduced and or adopted under this agenda. So we have one set of minutes. I do know of one change that needs to be made. Do you want to report on that, or you have it in front of you?
Yeah, I believe, so the amended minutes were distributed there to the packet online as well as distributed here in the council chambers at the
Okay.
dais and in the back. But it's basically a change. One of the summaries for one of the items was attributed to the wrong item, and that was just moved to the right item.
Okay, great. But the amended one is out. Okay, great. Thanks. Did any council members see any other amendments needed? Okay, so I'll open up the minutes of the July 8th meeting for public comment. Anybody in the chambers wishing to make public comment on the minutes? Okay, not seeing any. We'll check with Zoom.
Thank you, Mayor Ford. Speaking to our Zoom attendees, if you'd like to make a public comment on approval of the minutes, please use the raise hand icon. There are no hands, Mayor Ford. That will end public comment.
Great, thanks. And so is anybody, any discussion or a motion?
Move to approve the minutes. Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, that brings us to item 3, agenda review. I want to point out we're using a new agenda process that we approved last meeting, and it's been 5 weeks since I last ran a meeting. So we'll see if I carry this off, but correct me if I'm screwing something up. And let's check for any changes to the agenda.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. One suggested change under public hearing, item 7A. This is the annexation item for the Flayhaven project. Just in the order of, there's some other items related to the Flayhaven project on the consent calendar, but to just retain the proper order of things, it's recommended that 7A move up before citizens' business and consent calendar. So right after this item, essentially. And just confirming that the public hearings were all noticed as, if people are interested in attending the public hearing, they should be here at 6 p.m. It could be as soon as 6 p.m. is how it's noticed in the public.
Okay.
If there's any concerns about the timing of it.
Okay, so the agenda would be, we would move item 7A, the public hearing 7A, to right after this item, right after item 3, and no other proposed changes. Is there any public comment on that change to the, on the agenda? We'll check in the room first. Okay, not seeing any. Let's check with Zoom.
Thank you, Mayor Ford. Once again, Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a public comment on this item. Mayor Ford, that will end public comment.
Okay, so I'll remind people that under our new process, I will explicitly invite public comment for any item that we're considering that's marked on the agenda as an action item. Any other item, people are welcome to raise their hand at the beginning of the item if they wish to make a comment, or turn in a speaker card for that item, and then I'll be sure to call for public comment. And if we have anybody who wishes to speak on one of those non-action items, then I'll open it for anybody who wishes to speak. If you're on Zoom and you wish to speak on a non-action item, use the raise hand function in Zoom, and the clerk will point it out to us. Okay. So we're on to the old 7A. So this is public hearing, consideration to adopt a resolution approving annexation of certain property to Community Facilities District number 2017-01, Public Services, and taking associated action. Start with the staff report.
Mayor, members of the council, Craig Scott, Public Works Director, City Engineer. Tonight's item is consider annexing a property into the city's Community Facilities Districts 2017-01. I do have a PowerPoint associated with this presentation. The Community Facilities District was formed back in 2017 with Centero Way, where that property both initiated the assessment district and identified the city limits as the future annexation area. So any proper, it would facilitate any properties that would be annexed within that boundary. Next slide, please. This is the history. We have now a string of properties that have been annexed into the CFD over the last nearly 10 years. So following the 2017 formation, we had Kessing Ranch annexed. So their annexation number 2018-01, they're existing. Jamie Lane 23-01, and then this one tonight is proposed for the Flayhaven Estates. And again, the future annexation areas are defined with a map recorded with the county as the coincident with the city limits. Next slide, please. This is the map that's going to be recorded, which establishes the boundary. Right now, it is a single property with a single owner. And the intent is to subdivide it, but we'll hear about that later. Next slide, please. What do they get? What do the property owners, and future property owners get with this annexation and their annual assessment? They get police services, maintaining parks, lighting, parkways, street roads, open space, maintenance of related facilities, equipment, vehicles, supplies, flood and stormwater protection, and staff and overhead costs. So, and the amount goes up with the CPI every year. Next slide, please. Okay, so since the district was formed in 2017, I guess, well, I'm sorry, following this meeting, we have, we're going to record the map with the recorder's office. And then once a building permit gets issued by May 1st of every year, that list of properties on each of the areas that have been annexed into the CFD gets submitted to the county assessor's office. So that's how that works. This just says for this meeting, it was duly noticed in July 8th when we had our intent to annex this property. And since then, it's been properly noticed. And now we have the public hearing. With that, that concludes the presentation. Next slide, please. The step is to conduct the public hearing and then adopt a recommendation is to adopt the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any council questions for staff before we open the public hearing? Okay, not seeing any. We'll open the public hearing on this item to annex to the CFT. We'll start in the room. Not seeing anybody in the room. Let's check the Zoom.
Thank you, Mayor Ford. Once again, Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a public comment on this item. Mayor Ford, that will end public comment.
Okay, back to council for discussion. Any discussion? Somebody like to make a motion?
I make a motion that the City Council of the City of Cotati adopt a resolution approving the annexation of certain property to the Community Facilities District number 2017-01, approving the annexation map related thereto, and authorizing and directing recording thereof, and authorizing and directing the preparation and recording of an amended notice of special tax lien related thereto. Second.
All right, all in, let's see. I'm sorry, was I supposed to say I'm closing the public hearing? Is that an important piece of this?
It is important,
Yes.
Okay. I should have said that when nobody had a comment. Closing the public hearing. And now we're back to council for a vote. And is a voice vote okay for this? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that carries unanimously. Thank you all. And now back to our regularly scheduled program. We will move on to the citizen business and public comment for consent calendar items. Any member of the public wishing to speak to the council on any items listed on the consent calendar or any matters not listed on the agenda that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council may do so at this time. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the council is not allowed to consider issues or take action on any item not listed on the agenda. Pursuant to the City Council Rules of Conduct, comments of any member of the public are normally restricted to a total of 3 minutes in length per person for matters not on the agenda and a total of 3 minutes per person in length for any and all items on the consent calendar. The mayor may extend the time limit for a reasonable time where a disability accommodation has been requested. To facilitate public comment, timer indicator lights will display yellow when there are 30 seconds remaining and red when time has expired. And I've been told that the Zoom timer isn't showing, so the city clerk will give a 30-second warning to Zoom commenters. All right, so we'll start in the room. Anybody with citizen business or consent calendar comments? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm George Barrich. I'm a former city councilman here in Cotati. My first comment here is regarding citizens' business. This paragraph that you wrote is very good, but again, I don't think it's necessary that the mayor read it. I think you're doing it to be helpful, but I just think it's just, it's not necessary. I like the fact that it's here. Anybody who wants to speak can easily read this, and that would streamline the meeting for you if you just don't have to read it. My next comment has to do with the fact that up above the second page of the agenda, it talks about rules of decorum. And the one item here I think needs some attention and to be added. It says members of the public are prohibited from speaking, yelling, or otherwise making loud noises from the audience that disrupts the orderly proceedings of the meeting. I think it should add comma, unless there appears to be a violation of the law. And in that case, citizens are under a duty and obligated to bring that violation of the law forward. In the proper idea of governance, good governance, I think that could be added. We're not all perfect, but citizens have a right and a duty to bring to your attention if something is unlawful. You're speaking out of order, you're adding to the agenda that something is not there, you're being disruptive yourself. I think there needs to be an addition there. I do like the fact that announcements has been moved into an area where the mayor no longer has to read it. And I must have been up here at the podium maybe a dozen times talking about this. And I'm glad we've gotten to a point where I was not only listened to, but my idea was adopted to move this to a section where it can easily be read and digested by the public. Although I don't agree with a lot of it, where you love to hear from people, but at least you're not having to say it verbally. So I think that's good that the announcements are there. People come in early that they can read this and digest this. My next comment about the agenda is I do believe that it's high time that the moment of silence be brought back to these meetings. It was part of these meetings for some 40 years, 35, 40 years, until Councilman Bob Coleman moved to have it removed. I think it's high time that moment of silence be brought back onto the agenda, and also that the Pledge of Allegiance be brought forward to the beginning of the meeting agenda, as is the case in most cities across this nation. Okay, for some 50 years, the Pledge of Allegiance was at the beginning of the meeting, as well as a moment of silence, to set a tone for the professionalism, the patriotism, the abidance to law and order, to bring those things forward to set a tone. The fact that the pledge is at the end of the meeting is just not right. And I'd like to see those brought forward. And I do believe that the typeset for these first 2 pages is still a little small. I would ask staff to look at this and see if they can enlarge it. I don't think we have a paper shortage here at Cotati, but it would help to raise the typeset on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to propose that the city council members insist that on a future agenda item, the repeal of the administrative codes implemented in 2009 be repealed, the code enforcement ones, from June 2019 agenda packet. The current administrative codes implemented in 2009 have in practice been unconstitutional, and that is against the Fourth Amendment, in that they are against search and seizure protections. The tool that was implemented in 2009 was that the code violations would be treated like a traffic ticket. If a code violation is suspected, the person would be cited. They can pay the fine or appeal it, but first depositing the fine amount before appealing. The relevant code sections are 1.28040 and a bunch of them. This code is unconstitutional in that it is seizure of assets without due process. A person is guilty of a violation first if it is suspected by the code officer and any employee of the city. The person may have then has 2 routes to go, both of which seizes the person's property, money. They can pay the fine and be done with it, or they can appeal the ticket, but they still have to deposit the full amount of the fine to appeal. That would be a months-long appeal. Either way, the person has to pay out first, whether guilty or not. Most people are not going to appeal, but rather just pay the ticket. This makes a person guilty of a violation, no matter what. Issues such as human habitation of a vehicle are subjective in nature and would need an approval that, for instance, it was a dog in an RV when the code officer insists it was a person habitating in a vehicle. Repealing the 2019 administrative code changes would return the hearings back to in front of the city council. Before 2009, there was only one code enforcement case in 2005 that made it before the council in the decade to my knowledge. And it was my next door neighbors, and Susan Harvey would remember it. And one of the justifications in 2019 was costs, that it's too much, it would save the city council time and costs. And that's not what it's done. The rest, okay, and then the rest of the any complaints were handled by city staff in open communication with the Community Development Department. I am writing this as a citizen, not as a paralegal of Attorney Briggs. It is my idea and research with no urging by Mr. Briggs to do so. It has been claimed by Code Enforcement Officer Mr. Smith that I am under orders from Attorney Briggs to disrupt or be the spokesperson for him, according for Mr. Briggs. Here is when this has happened numerous times, that I've been accused of being not really being even a person. I'm sent into the council meetings by other people. And I definitely have a voice, and I would like this to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody, Mr. Chairman?
Okay, as I was not able to finish my comments at your last meeting, I will finish them here and now. I'm under no presumption that you will take my recommended actions, so I am simply here attempting one more time to educate those who prefer ignorance over enlightenment. As you evidently don't know how to use a dictionary, Mayor Ford, and prefer to be validated by a habitual liar impersonating an attorney, I give you Merriam-Webster's definition of ceremony. 1, a formal act or series of acts. Number 2, A, a conventional act of politeness etiquette. B, an action performed only formally with no deep significance. C, a routine action performed with elaborate pomp. It would seem that Mr. Bacher has no more ability than you, Mr. Mayor, to access a dictionary. Perhaps he would like a legal source other than my city attorney who stated he is wrong. I direct you to Law Insider. Ceremony means a formal act or set of formal acts established by custom or authority. How about Black's Law Dictionary, 7th edition? Act, a noun, something done or performed. Saying the pledge or land acknowledgement is therefore a ceremonial action, and the ceremony in and of itself is an action. In regard to Mr. Bacher's apology to the council at the last meeting, it is interesting that John prefers to hide the truth from the public and the council by stating he made a mistake in attaching Mr. Obid's remarks in response to Ms. Alderman's request to meet with you, her public representatives. Mr. Bacher's email response confirms my point. Mr. Bacher states, quote, because of the potential for litigation, it is inappropriate for the council members to meet regarding Ms. Alderman's issues because they may bias themselves and not be able to participate in decision-making regarding a litigation, end quote. What Bacher isn't telling you is that this potential litigation may be avoided if you were fully aware of the situation and took appropriate action. Besides attempting to protect Mr. Obid's unwarranted, illegal, and unprofessional response to the public he was hired to serve, Mr. Bacher is really saying in his response to Ms. Alderman is he doesn't want the council to know all of the facts, only the ones he wishes them to know. As a councilman, a former councilman, it was my duty to provide oversight on city staff. City staffs just hate it when you actually do your job rather than rubber stamping everything and anything that they suggest. Very few elected officials accept this or actually do it. They would all rather be part of a big, happy family of government officials whose only loyalty is to their paychecks. As I stated at the last meeting, the CPRA, the California Public Records Act, has a purpose in opposition to your staff's desire to hide the truth. Quote, implicit in the democratic process is the notion that government should be accountable for its actions. In order to verify accountability, individuals may have access must have access to government files. Such access permits checks against arbitrary exercise of official power and secrecy in the process, end quote. Viewing public records requests as a nuisance, a quote nuisance, and a quote waste of time by Mr. Obid is not surprising when you're attempting to hide your regime's collusion and corruption. In addition, Mr. Obid has proven he is attempting to influence how a supposedly neutral, unbiased administrative hearing officer, ALJ, is proceeding to hear a case in front of him. Obid is partially correct on one thing. This will turn into a full court press by the public to correct our ongoing grievances with this system, your system. The question has now become, who is Bacher and Obid trying to protect? Is it this council from litigation, which could be avoided if you knew the truth? Or is it themselves from, quote, the arbitrary exercise of official power and secrecy in the political process, end quote? This is also known as the abuse of authority under the color of law. It's now time for you to do your job and consider replacements for these two positions whose employment you control. Obid can be fired for cause and Bacher for errantly backing the system and misinterpreting the law for the elected. As a council, you either take action to correct this situation, or you incriminate yourself by continuing down this path of retribution, retaliation, and illegal punishment, which these two are obviously doing at your behest. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the chambers? Okay, let's check with Zoom.
Thank you, Mayor Ford. Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a public comment. Seeing no hands, Mayor Ford, that will end public comment.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to item 5, the consent calendar. Are there any council members who have any item they wish to pull from the consent calendar? Okay. Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Second?
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries unanimously. All right, thank you. That brings us to item 6, direction on future agenda items. Are there council members who have something they wish to propose? Council members Parks.
Thank you. I spoke with the city manager about this. I proposed bringing a discussion about the way that we solicit proposals for for various projects throughout the city, road projects, sidewalk projects, things like that, parks. And that we have a discussion about potential ways to ensure that we are getting high quality bids coming in. And it was suggested that this would be something to bring back at mid-year to discuss whether we wanted to place that on a future agenda at the mid-year. So I just wanted to bring that up now and let you know that I had proposed that.
Is everybody okay with putting that on a future agenda, or do you need to hear a little more information? Are we good? We're good with that? Okay. We'll agendize that.
What I
Oh, go
thought
ahead.
I heard was that we would discuss it at mid-year is where we would,
So
is what I thought I heard.
agendize, but by discuss it, you mean agendize it?
Well, when, as part of our mid-year,
When we,
kind of-
yeah, when we do the mid-year.
yeah.
Do we
just
want
as
to add
part of that.
anything onto our list? We could discuss at that
Yeah.
point whether or not to put it
Okay.
on the list.
Okay. Okay.
Am I getting that right, city manager?
Yeah,
Obed?
yeah, that's
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
That's correct, yeah.
Not as a separate thing, but as part of that overall discussion.
So you're telling us now you're going to be,
Yeah.
you're going to be bringing that up to add to the list when we have that
I'm
discussion.
making it official. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks. Anything else from anybody? Okay, thanks. So we'll move on to public hearings, and we already did 7A, so we're on to 7B, approval of development impact fee update. Start with a staff report.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. All right, so the city, as you probably all know, has adopted a variety of development impact fees over many years. And these have been based on a variety of metrics from codified formulas to, in the case of like water and sewer, based on water meter sizes, to some that are just based on number of units, so unit counts. Recent state law, as well as council direction from strategic planning, was to move forward with a impact fee study to convert our impact fees to be square footage based. So specifically, the state law is about housing, but we're talking generally for impact fees, going from the variety of different metrics that we currently use into a square footage based impact fee formula. And also recent state law requires impact fee nexus studies every 8 years. So that's another thing that's initiating this conversation tonight. So I will say the nexus study that's in the packet and that we're discussing tonight is the first time that I'm aware that the city is actually looking at all the impact fees together. So previously they'd been adopted one at a time over a period of time. And so it's both a comprehensive update of almost all of the impact fees. There's a couple exceptions, but I'll talk about that in a minute. But also an opportunity to look at them holistically, both for fiscal stability and also as a tool for accomplishing certain policy goals the council has. There is just to set the foundation for impact fees, there's a long policy history in California for requiring new developments to pay for the infrastructure impacts that they cause, rather than having the burden of the cost of that infrastructure fall on existing funding sources that the local jurisdictions have, and ultimately the existing residents. So the purpose of a development impact fee is to have new development pay their proportional share of the impact that they cause by the new development for the needed infrastructure. In the case of water and sewer, there's a slight wrinkle to that. There's also a buy-in element. There's an existing water system, an existing sewer system that part of that component of the cost is them buying into the existing system that's there for their benefit. So there's 3 parts, as you see from the recommendation. There's a nexus study that evaluates what's termed under the law the maximum justifiable fee. This includes, this also in the packet includes a fee comparison of prototype developments in some of the neighboring communities, Petaluma, Rohnert Park, Santa Rosa, and American Canyon. And there's also an update with various single-family dwelling prototypes. So the one that was in the packet that was published was for a 2,500 square foot single-family home. And before you have an update to that includes a breakout of the single-family dwellings into more sizes. So it's 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, and then the original 2,500 square foot. So you can see how the size of the unit affects the impact fee cost. And that's available in the room on the online packet and at the dais. And the second part, so that's one part. The second part, and I will say, we also have Carlos from Wildan here. He's going to give a presentation here in a minute on the Nexus study. There's also an ordinance in the packet. So in addition to approving the Nexus study is one of the recommendations. The other recommendation is introducing an ordinance. And the primary purpose of this ordinance is to pull the various inflationary indices together into a single index, because we have, as I said earlier, our impact fees historically have been adopted over a series of years, and the indices they use for inflation are different depending on the fee. So that just adds to the, just that makes it more complicated and adds to the confusion. So the only sort of nuance there is that some of the park and lieu ordinance language is also updated to switch from what's called a Quimby fee to a general fee. And then the formula that's baked into the code is stricken, and there's a new way to, basically it turns into a square footage based fee. But so that's what the language changes are in that part of the ordinance. And then finally, there's some draft policy recommendations around lodging and affordable housing to meet some previously expressed policy goals. And just to reiterate, the first two are intended for action tonight if the council wants to move forward on them. The third one is not intended for action tonight. It's just for a conversation about potential policy recommendations and where the council wants to go with that. So the only fees that aren't included in this that are not included in this Nexus study are the inclusionary housing fees and the linkage fees. So the inclusionary housing fee, as is currently structured, is really only paid by small developments. So 9 units or less are the only ones that are typically eligible for paying in lieu fee, as opposed to incorporating the affordable housing into the development itself. So that's not included in this conversation tonight, just as a heads up. Also, the linkage fees. So linkage fees are affordable housing fees for commercial development. So if you are, if you're building a commercial office space, you have, through a linkage fee, an obligation to pay into essentially an affordable housing fund. That's what that is. That's also not in this study that we're talking about tonight. The study includes a new general plan fee, but it also includes a rescission of the existing downtown specific plan fee. So those are just two changes in terms of the fee types. The rest of the fee types are the fee types that we currently have. We're just changing how they're calculated and the basis that they're calculated. And then if the Nexus study is adopted by the council tonight, there's a 60-day runway for that. So any fees wouldn't go into effect until 60 days after adoption. So with that, Carlos, if you want to come on up, please, to the dais. So, and then once Carlos is done with the presentation about the Nexus study, I'll get into any question and answers, any questions the council has. I'll get into some of the policy recommendations and the details, and we'll go through that. Thank you, Carlos.
Great. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Carlos Villarreal with Wildan Financial Services, and I prepared the study in front of you tonight. So I'll just start with a little bit of Impact Fee 101 so that we're all on the same page as to what we're talking about. I will review at a high level some of the assumptions that were driving the fee analysis, and then I'll go through the methodologies, the different methodologies that we use to allocate cost to new development so that they pay their proportional share of the needed facilities and infrastructure to serve that development. And finally, I will end with the maximum justified fee schedule that was discussed earlier. Next slide, please. All right, just so we're all on the same page, a little bit of Impact Fee 101. Impact fees are a one-time charge to new development. So if you're building a new home or you're building a new commercial space, the fees are typically imposed at building permit, although recently there have been some changes in the state law that allow them to be charged at certificate of occupancy for certain residential projects. And they are imposed on all development projects within a defined geographic area. In this case, all the fees that we're looking at are going to be charged uniformly citywide. And the key to the Nexus study and the key to the fees is that we need to demonstrate the relationship between the new development, who's paying the fee, and that the fee will be used to fund facilities that will serve that development. So you have to be new facilities or expanding capacity we can't be using these funding sources to do maintenance or rehab. It has to be capacity expanding facilities to serve that growth. Next slide, please. In California, it's the Mitigation Fee Act that lays out how a local agency would calculate and implement an impact fee. There are several findings that our study needs to make. First, we need to demonstrate that new development creates the need for facilities. We need to demonstrate that new development will benefit from the use of the fee revenue, and that the fees are roughly proportional to new development's share of facility costs. We also need to document the purpose of the fee. Basically, that's the fee category that the fees are associated with and how the city intends to spend the fee revenue. Next slide, please. Recently, AB 602 passed, and it was pretty major change to impact fee laws in California. And there's several items that, of course, we took into account, but I think are important for your council to be aware of. The first item is sort of a housekeeping item where now explicit that jurisdictions need to make a certain information available on your website, like your fee study, your current fee schedule, any annual and 5-year reporting associated with the fee program. It's really just sort of a disclosure requirement there. In terms of the impact fee adoption process, which we are complying with, prior to the adoption of any impact fees, you need to adopt the Nexus study itself, and there needs to be a 30-day notice period. And then in terms of technical changes, your city manager already touched on some of these. The big one being that residential fees need to be calculated per square foot unless we make some findings to justify another metric. In our study, all of the residential fees are calculated per square foot to comply with this provision here. Large jurisdictions, which are defined as a city within a county that has greater than 250,000 residents, need to include a capital improvement plan as part of the Nexus study. In this case, your Nexus study is drawing off your existing capital improvement plan, so it complies with that. The Nexus study needs to identify the level of service, which we've always done in Nexus studies. And then if the fees are increasing, you need to take a look at the original assumptions from the prior Nexus study. Next slide, please. In terms of our basic methodology, this flowchart sort of summarizes our approach. We start by estimating demand for facilities, and typically we think about demand in terms of people, so people that live and work in the city today, and then we project out to a defined planning horizon. We can then identify facility standards, and the common example here is park acres per 1,000 residents. We can identify the level of service that exists today, and we could set the fees to maintain that same level of service. Using those standards, but also any other planning that the city has done, like a water or wastewater master plan, we can then identify the facilities needed to serve new development and the city at large out into the future. And then we can allocate a share of those costs to the impact fee. In some cases, new development can fund all of the facility improvements. In other cases, they will pay their proportional share corresponding with the service they receive from a particular facility. In the cases that new development won't be fully funding a facility, we'll identify the share that needs to come from another funding source. And then finally, we calculate the fee schedule by allocating the cost per unit of new development. Next slide, please. So in this update, we are looking at the following 5 fees. A park facilities fee, which would be replacing your city's in lieu park fee. Traffic facilities fee, which is an update to a current fee. A new general plan fee, which would be, I believe you have a specific plan fee that funds some of the similar things, but this fee would supplant that fee, and then updates to your water and sewer capacity fees. Next slide, please. So this next slide lays out the overarching growth projections that drive the analysis. The build-out projections are partially based on your existing general plan, but we also augmented it with additional information from the Santero Way specific plan update. So you can see there, it's not a whole huge amount of growth, but certainly considering that you're a pretty small city to begin with, an increase of 3,900 residents, 2,100 dwelling units, and about 5,600 or so employees between now and build out. That's going to represent a notable increase in demand for facilities, and of course the impact fees would be corresponding with new development paying their share of that the facilities needed to serve that demand. Next slide, please. So I mentioned different methodologies that we can use to allocate the fee. I'll just briefly go through the 4 different approaches that we used in this study. Now, for the water and sewer capacity fees, for a component of those fees, we use what's called a buy-in approach. The idea is that there's certain infrastructure in the ground today that has excess capacity, and new development can pay their share of that existing capacity and buy into the value of the existing facilities. The existing inventory approach already went through briefly when discussing park fees, but the idea is here is that we can quantify your existing level of service. In this case, it's park acres per 1,000 residents. And then we can have new development fund new parks at that same level of service to maintain that same standard off into the future. The planned facilities approach is when we can identify a particular facility or a share of a particular facility that's only needed to serve growth. We use this for a component of the traffic, water, and sewer fees. The math there is we take the cost needed to serve growth and divide that by the increase in demand, and that drives the fee calculation. And then finally, the system plan approach is when we're allocating the cost of a facility. In this case, it's the general plan updates. Those costs are needed to serve both new development and existing development. So those costs are divided over existing demand plus future demand, and that drives the fee calculation. Next slide, please. So in terms of the methodologies used, we use the existing standard approach to maintain your level of service for parks. We allocated general plan costs across the entire system for the general plan fee. For a component of the water and sewer fees, we use that planned facilities approach driven by identified planned facilities from your master plans and prior fee study. And then for the capacity component, a component of your water and sewer capacity fees, we also use that buy-in approach to buy into the existing excess capacity of those systems. Next slide, please. So in terms of the facilities being funded by these fees, this next slide just sort of lays those out. The general plan fee pays for a share of future general plan updates. Park fees are calculated to maintain the existing level of service. Your traffic facilities fees are based on capacity expanding facilities. And there's a pretty long list of facilities in the study, but the highlights are, more traffic signals, improvements to State Route 116, your La Plaza reunification project, and then various safety improvements and improvements from your bike and pedestrian master plan. For water facilities and sewer facilities, those fees are again based on partially on a list of facilities from your master plans, but also paying for a share of the excess capacity of your existing system. Next slide, please. And so what does that all boil down to? This is sort of the punchline for the whole study, your maximum justified fee schedule. All fees for both residential and non-residential are expressed per square foot. As was mentioned earlier, your water capacity fee currently is charged by water meter size, but we've standardized that across all the different fee categories here. So the maximum justified fee for residential across all the fees that we're looking at is $25.54 per square foot. Of course, if you're building a larger unit, that scales up. And if you're building a smaller unit, you pay proportionally lower fees. So that's the fee schedule. And I believe that's the end of the presentation. If you go to the next slide, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you all might have for me.
Council questions? I'm not seeing any.
All right, thank you.
So thank you. I want to appreciate the last minute preparation of those impact fees by different sizes of single family homes. And I think if you're going to do square footage based studies in the future, that's important to see how that changes. No questions here. Okay, so you want to go on and talk about the next issues?
Yeah. All right. So just one thing on that point, one thing I will point out, if it wasn't, maybe it wasn't obvious, was the communities that were chosen. So Petaluma in the comparison, Petaluma was chosen because they're a neighbor. Rohnert Park, Santa Rosa, and American Canyon were chosen because they are generally perceived as high growth communities. And so the idea there is that if their impact fees are, if we're kind of in the same ballpark with them, clearly impact fees aren't having a significant effect on development in those communities because they seem to have no problem, getting new units built. So that was the primary purpose, is to kind of see our neighbors, but also see where we are generally positioned, both from a competitive standpoint, but also from how would we look against a high growth community. So that's I'll just add that before I move on to the next thing. So the next thing I'll just touch on. I already went over the ordinance modifications. One thing I neglected to mention was there also were some edits to the fee deferral ordinance, and that was mostly because of the changes in state law that we discussed, where residential development now. Carlos said some types of residential development, but for all intents and purposes for us, it's essentially all types of residential development. So that's what those edits are in that proposed ordinance, is that it would defer. So before the process was they have to come to council to get a deferral. This would allow those deferrals to happen on residential projects by default, just to comply with state law. So that was the other piece of that I neglected to mention earlier. Before I get into the policy overview and recommendations, I'll pause for a second if anyone has any questions about the ordinance edits.
Any questions about the ordinance? It's about deferrals and standardizing the inflationary measure, right?
Sounds like.
Okay, Councilmember Sparks.
I have a question kind of going back to the fees in general, if that's okay. I was just looking at the comparison charts that were provided for the different prototypes. And I'm wondering if you can just clarify for me, since Petaluma, Roanoke Park, and Santa Rosa all have these substantial public/capital facilities fees, and then we organize it differently. What exactly, it's kind of hard to compare apples to apples, what our fees would be if they were organized the same way, in comparison. So can you maybe just tell what would be included in the public and capital facilities fees for those other cities?
Yeah, I think Carlos tried to footnote those in the tables as much as possible, but they tend to aggregate everything together into a single fee, which during the development of the fee study, we had conversations about this, and the general recommendation when Carlos and I were speaking about it was it's a better practice to have them individually accounted for and tracked that way. You start mixing them together. I don't know from an accounting, I don't know enough about their programs from an accounting perspective to know how they actually account for the revenue they get, but you wouldn't, for obvious reasons, you wouldn't want to actually commingle them into a single fund in practice. So maybe there's a kind of back of the house way that they track it. That's not apparent. But basically that's what it is. These public facility fee single charges they wrap up a lot of different fees into this single charge. And you'll notice also in some jurisdictions, they have like a minimum and maximum, because they have different areas of the city that have different impact fee schedules. Carlos mentioned in his presentation that we have a single fee study, single set of fees for the city. And the reason why I said that is because some cities, particularly bigger cities or cities that have areas that have specific areas of focus, can have different fee schedules geographically based within the city. So you'll see some of the cities that are in that chart have some wide variation in minimum and maximum, because it just really depends where in the city you're developing. Yeah.
I'm going to follow up with one more question about those tables. The tables list, even in the maximum justified, they still list a specific plan fee. But in what we're considering replacing that with the general plan fee. So we wouldn't be so the high end wouldn't be in play for us for most of these tables. The only difference is the inclusion of that specific plan fee.
Yeah, for us, the min and max is the specific plan.
Right. Which in the staff's proposal, we would replace with the general plan fee.
Right. Yeah, good point. So in our existing fee schedule, that's the one sort of caveat, is that we have a specific plan fee. So if you develop in the specific plan, you're subject to that fee. Otherwise, you're not. And we'd be moving to a general plan that would be applicable across the city and getting rid of the specific plan fee.
Okay, thanks. Any more questions? Go ahead. Councilmember Harvey.
I noticed that some of these cities also have an affordable housing fee. Is that something that you guys looked at, and what was the discussion around that?
Yeah, maybe Carlos, if you wouldn't mind addressing that. So we do, we have an affordable housing fee, and he can verify if this is true, but actually, why don't, before I just go out and assume something, well, if you could explain why they have an affordable housing fee in their schedule there.
Yeah, so some cities allow, or have inclusionary requirements. Other cities allow that requirement to be met with an affordable housing fee instead, or a combination of the two. We pulled it to the bottom of the table there because also a lot of developers just provide the units on site and don't actually pay the fee. So it's one of those things where, yes, it's applicable in some cities, it's only applicable in certain situations. So we wanted to provide the information, but also kind of wanted to separate it out so that you could kind of consider the overall fee burden with and without those figures when they might apply.
Thank you.
Vice
Yeah.
Mayor Lemus.
Yes, I know we're going to do a consideration of the other policy recommendations later, after this part, right? The lodging and affordable housing.
Yeah, we'll talk about that next after we're done with this conversation.
Okay, so yeah, my question is that if we, approving that rate for square footage, if some developers wants a different consideration, do they come to city council, have a development agreement, or do we just not allow it?
Well, so, yeah, it gets kind of into the policy conversation, but I mean, I would say generally, there's two ways that fees can be reduced or eliminated. And generally, you know, my experience and my understanding just from other cities is that, you know, generally what happens is jurisdictions will adopt the fees that are justifiable for the policy reasons that we talked about, so that new development pays their share. Sometimes there's policy reasons why cities want to reduce certain fees. That's part of what this next conversation is about. So that'd be a policy sort of across the board by category. And the councils can do that. Alternatively, councils can reduce or waive fees project by project. But if you do it that way, then it's considered it's considered public funding, and it could trigger prevailing wage. So there's a different consideration there if it's waived project by project.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the streamlining, but I just didn't know whether it would still trigger, you know, people kind of trying to go back to, you know, we're streamlining it this way, you know, versus going back and asking for different accommodations, but. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the fee, one of the things I'll say about our existing fee schedule, it's very difficult for developers to figure out how much they have to pay in impact fees. And so, because some of them are formulas that only staff can really calculate, because there's assumptions in there that they can take guesses, but they don't really know. This would make it extremely simple for anyone to calculate exactly what they owe. So it's very helpful from a transparency perspective.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
More questions? Okay, so we've heard the staff report and had questions on two of the three issues. One is the impact fee study moving to square footage base. The second is the ordinance that would move us all to move all of those fees to a common inflationary thing and deal with deferral of most residential fee or many residential fees to residency permit or occupancy. Okay, yeah. And the third one is a policy discussion.
Right. Okay. So, the policy recommendations, these were just based on, you know, as part of our economic. So let me talk about lodging first. I'll just start there, and then we'll talk about affordable housing next, because I think that the first conversation might be a little less complicated than the second one. So as part of our economic development strategy, the city has been seeking to bring in high quality lodging options for visitors to Cotati. So as the council is well aware, overnight lodging brings visitors into the city that support local businesses, help diversify the economy, and support local services and infrastructure through sales tax. And through sales tax, there is some property tax and also a locally collected tax, which is called the transient occupancy tax, or TOT tax. Cotati is the only city in Sonoma County with no overnight lodging options or TOT revenue. So therefore it's been a economic development imperative for quite a while. In the city's municipal code, hotels are required to pay a TOT of 10%. Additionally, the city, as well as most other cities in this county, are part of the Sonoma County Tourism District. And so the district will collect an additional 2%. And so effectively for a visitor staying in a hotel in Cotati, they'd be paying 12%. That's what they would see. And so Cotati, our TOT rate is 12%, so is Petaluma, and so is Cloverdale. Other cities in Sonoma County have a higher TOT, with the highest being 16%, which is Healdsburg and Santa Rosa. Given the economic imperative to diversify revenue sources and continue to grow revenue to provide high quality services and infrastructure to our residents, staff explored options to incentivize the construction of quality lodging through the impact fee program. And unlike other land uses, lodging comes with a separate local revenue source, the TOT revenue I mentioned previously, in addition to the other incremental taxes and property and sales. Therefore, it's with the TOT, it is possible to effectively recover the equivalent of impact fees, if not more, obviously over time through TOT. So for this reason, there's a recommendation that impact fees for 3-star or better lodging, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, be eliminated. And if the council wishes, a portion of that TOT revenue equivalent to the impact fees could be directed through internal loaning, backfilling those fees. So there's a backfill mechanism built into lodging development. There is no universal hotel rating system. I'll just point that out. But a general summary of the rating criteria is in the staff report. If the council wants to move forward with this recommendation, we would further develop what that looks like and bake it into some sort of policy. Also in the staff report, just to try to simplify the conversation for tonight, there's also a summary sheet that's attached, development impact fee policy recommendation summaries for consideration. So this for hotels, it would reduce all development impact fees. Schools would be excluded from this because schools have their own development impact fee collection mechanism. The lodging must be a 3-star or equivalent or better. Extended stay hotels would not be eligible for a program like this. A portion of the TOT revenue equivalent to the impact fees that were effectively deferred would be directed through a backfill mechanism to refund those impact fee programs. And I'll also point out that the city also established an impact fee for Rancho Adobe. And the policy recommendation includes that Rancho Adobe would also be made whole, just like the other city fees. It is still a city fee, even though it's on behalf of Rancho Adobe. So it's still a city fee. And then there would be no predefined program sunset in the sort of concept program. So that's one of the policy recommendations. The other policy recommendation is about affordable housing. And so just to back up for affordable housing, there's 3 jurisdictions that we're aware of that have adopted some reduction of affordable housing by policy and a reduction of development impact fees by policy. And these, the 3 jurisdictions that have done some sort of development impact fee reductions are Petaluma, Santa Rosa, and the county. And Petaluma, this summary is all in the staff report, but I'll just give you the highlights. So Petaluma basically set all impact fees except water and sewer to 0 for deed restricted, 100% affordable, and affordable supportive housing. So those 2 development types. There's no sunset date on Petaluma's program, and there's no, they didn't identify any sort of backfill funding mechanism. So they're just eliminating the fees, not collecting them. In the implementing staff report, they talk about maybe we'll get grants or things like that, but there's no predefined backfill mechanism for Petaluma's program. Santa Rosa was the other jurisdiction that's adopted this. They adopted a pilot program. It's a 3-year pilot program, so it's not indefinite like Petaluma's. But they eliminated all impact fees for all deed restricted affordable housing based on their progress to meeting the RHNA goals. So they didn't restrict it to 100% affordable. It could be mixed market, as long as they were deed restricted and they were meeting. The concept was they were trying to meet progress or encourage progress towards their RHNA goals for affordable housing. The 3-year pilot program, I believe it started in November of last year. And there is one carve out. Low income could sunset early if the RHNA goal is met prior to the end of the pilot program. The reason why is they were looking at their existing progress towards their RHNA goals and their affordable housing categories, and as well as their development pipeline. and their low-income category, so the middle category, was furthest along towards meeting their goal. So they felt with this program, they might actually hit their RENA goal early prior to the pilot program being over with. So they said if low income hits their RENA goal, then that category would shut down and they'd still have very low and moderate through the rest of the pilot program. They did not identify backfill of funding. As you know, Santa Rosa has a structural budget deficit. So that's what they said, we have a structural budget deficit, so we don't have any way to backfill that. But they also cited maybe we'll get grants, but they effectively delayed that conversation to the end of the pilot program. I think the concept there was that they would look at the actual, even though they're eliminating impact fees, they are tracking what they were. And so at the end of that pilot program, they would look at what that dollar amount was and see at that time if they could somehow backfill that. Projects receiving city funding are not eligible for the program, and it only applies at vertical construction of the building permit. So they would eliminate fees unit by unit. In other words, they won't say for like a subdivision project that has, say, 20 affordable units, they won't pre-commit the elimination to the subdivision project. They basically say, here's our program time horizon. You have to pull a vertical building permit within this time horizon, and then you'll get your fees eliminated. So building permit, just to make the distinction, there is a building permit variety that's just vertical, like, grading. I'm sorry, I said vertical and I went like this, sorry. Horizontal, yes. So it applies when they pull a vertical. So when they're actually going vertical with their building, that's when the essentially fee elimination would apply or be counted. And then lastly, the county, they eliminated all impact fees for all deed restricted affordable housing. So again, they didn't make a distinction between 100% affordable and general inclusionary mixed market. They need to be consistent with the county's RENA obligations. So they're looking at, there wasn't a specific cap though in any one of the three RENA categories, but that was the justification that they were citing, is that they want to try to encourage progress towards the RENA obligations, and that's what they're hoping to do. Just to point out, the county doesn't say this, but the county does not have, unlike a city, the county doesn't have water and sewer systems. County, those are served by special districts or private water companies or sewer companies. So they don't have those kind of impact fees to waive. It's just the other kind of like park fees and traffic fees, those kind of things. The county chose to do a 2-year pilot program starting in February of this year. And the 2-year time horizon was based on the timing of their Nexus study. They plan to do a development impact fee Nexus study like you're hearing tonight. And they figured that's going to be 18 months to 2 years to get it done. So it coincides with their Nexus study. And then when the Nexus study is done, they would essentially reassess everything. Fees are assessed. In other words, they're calculated, but they're not collected in their program at the time of building permit issuance, similar to Santa Rosa. Fees are assessed on a per unit, not project basis, similar to Santa Rosa. The county, though, did obligate $3 million in general fund money to backfill the impact fee losses. And this was based on their historical permit volumes for affordable housing, as well as their development pipeline. So they figured, $3 million over a 2-year period is a decent amount to cover the losses and impact fee that they would not collect. So those are the existing programs that are out there in the county right now. The city currently, as you all know, the city currently requires that all new market rate developments over 9 units incorporate 15% of the units as affordable housing with the affordability mix that best meets the city's RENA requirements. So previously it was a third, and a third, but through some recent ordinance updates, now it's more targeted towards our RENA requirements. So it's more flexible, but the policy there is that with the inclusionary housing is that affordable housing is spread throughout the market rate development, so they're virtually indistinguishable and fully integrated into the market rate neighborhoods. These types of projects are commonly financed through conventional construction loans, which means that any losses attributable to the affordable housing component of the project must be made up for with the market rate housing. So they're just baked into the overall construction loan and cost. Alternatively, some affordable housing is developed as 100% affordable housing. So these are typically financed differently than market rate housing. leveraging a variety of grants of public funds and other affordable housing funding sources to buy down the construction costs so that the development essentially becomes viable at the lower rent levels or sale prices. So notably, I will say that because of the various public funding sources used for 100% affordable housing projects, these are almost always prevailing wage projects just because of the amount of public assistance in the project, similar to any publicly funded project. So I also included in the staff report our RENA table. So that's just in there for background information. That was from the last APR that was presented to council, and it was current as of December 31st, 2024. Subsequently, the council did also entitle Redwood Row, which comes with another 44 units. So when you look at the total number of units, the building permits issued plus the entitled plus Redwood Row, if you look at the categories, basically what it means is very low would go from 25 to 17 units remaining. Low would go from 29 to 21, and moderate would go from 35 to 7. So that's just an update on that. So from the state perspective, it is an economic imperative that housing across all levels of affordability be available to retain the workforce here in the state and encourage economic growth, thus the constant barrage of legislation coming from the state. So locally, the city has entitled or re-entitled numerous housing developments, many of which have not yet gone into construction. So at least from the staff perspective, entitling projects has never been our challenge. It's been getting them from entitlement into construction. So eliminating or lowering the cost of an impact fee, and I'll just say just generally with impact fees, eliminating or lowering the cost of an impact fee doesn't eliminate the corresponding cost to the city. It simply would shift the cost to other existing funding sources. That's the structure that's proposed. So with mixed market projects, they're normal inclusionary. If by policy the council, previously by policy the council has wanted through their ordinances, through the ordinance encourage inclusionary housing to be able to mix housing through our market rate housing. This has been the focus of this policy recommendation because it's a longstanding policy goal. The goal here is to lower the cost of the affordable units in a conventionally financed development to encourage mixed market development to get off the fence from entitlement into development. And these projects are, as I said, conventionally financed. So these units, the benefit of conventional financing is the units can come to market much faster than if they actually move from entitlement into construction than a 100% affordable, a typical 100% affordable project, which requires a lot of different funding sources that take a long time to assemble, to put together. So they're slower to come online. 100% affordable projects in this recommendation, I'll get into some of the individual points, but the recommendation is that by policy, the mixed market would be the ones that would have reduced or eliminated impact fees. The 100% affordable projects would not, by policy, have a fee reduction. And there's a couple reasons for that. Basically, the council could, on a case-by-case basis, still reduce those impact fees or eliminate them if desired. And 100% affordable housing projects they can take advantage of a variety of state laws and incentive programs such as Builder's Remedy, SB 35, et cetera, that can often reduce the community and city input on the scope, scale, and design of the projects. So it enables the city council, by keeping the fee waivers under the discretion of the city council, it enables the city council to do that on a project-by-project basis rather than a blanket have to apply to every project that comes through the door, even by right. Even though the waiver reduction could likely trigger prevailing wage requirements, staff doesn't view this as a significant issue because through all the different public funding sources that come into these kind of projects, typically, they're already under prevailing wage requirements. So therefore, it would allow the council to have some amount of leverage in the conversation, especially like by right type projects, to make sure they meet the needs of the community when they come through the door. So that's why by policy, they're not recommended. Program duration, there's no sunset date or pilot period per se in the staff recommendation. But the affordable housing impact fee elimination would no longer be available if certain inclusionary, if and when the inclusionary housing and linkage fund balances reach zero. So those are the two funding sources that are proposed as a backfill for impact fees. And I'll go over some options in a second. One other consideration is that from a development perspective, providing certainty on which impact fees are going to be applied when is important, because when they go to get financing, they need to know, and the bank needs to know, what costs is this project going to incur or not. So one of the challenges with putting a sunset on just the dollar amounts going to zero is at building permit is they won't know until they actually pull the building permit if they've got the fees eliminated or not. So that's a challenge that I'll talk a little bit more about. But it's an important component for the council to consider, is that when a development moves forward, they need to know, are these fees eliminated or are they not? Otherwise, I don't know that it'll be successful in encouraging projects to get off the fence from entitlement and into construction. So I will say that how Petaluma and Santa Rosa and Sonoma County have addressed that issue, that uncertainty issue, is that they have Santa Rosa a little bit of a nuance with the low affordability category phasing out potentially early, but the other categories and then the other jurisdictions, they put time brackets on them. In Petaluma's case, there's no time bracket. So if you're a developer in Petaluma and you're trying to develop that specific project type, you know that those fees will be eliminated. So you can count for that. You can account on that in your pro forma. If you're in Santa Rosa or Sonoma County, aside from that low income category caveat, you know that you have a time horizon to kind of get your act together and get the units under construction and permitted. So that's how they provide some, at least time certainty. You know, if you don't meet that time frame, you're potentially out of luck because the program's over, the pilot program. So financial, if we use inclusionary housing and linkage funds to backfill, as of July 1, which is the last full accounting we have of the funds, we have basically 900,000 in inclusionary housing and 330 and linkage. So it's about 1.2 million total. Every year, I will say we have about a little under $70,000 in principal and interest coming into inclusionary housing for a long-term loan that inclusionary housing made to the sewer fund for the P1, that's the sewer that's under the freeway. And there's also some funding out for the purchase of 120 East Cotati. That depending on the structure of that development agreement that the council will be discussing later this year, we could be getting some money back for that, no money, all of the money. That would, potentially go into that could refund some or part of that. But those are some outstanding funding, inclusionary housing funding sources that are also out there in addition to sort of money in the bank, the 1.2 million that I mentioned earlier. If all those things came in, it would be about 3.6 million in total funding available. And I also put in the staff report just some, I won't go through all the detail, but if based on the prototypes that were used in the analysis, if a certain number of single family prototypes came through or certain number of apartment, or multifamily prototypes came through, this is how many, if we did 100% fee waivers, this is how many units we could do for the 1.2 million that's available currently. That's 100% elimination of those affordable units. Obviously, there's options there, but that just kind of gives you a sense. If we have 125 RHNA affordable units in total that have not been permitted yet, so they might be entitled already, but they haven't been actually permitted for construction. So we have 125 left and across all affordability classes. And if with the 1.2 million, that works out to, if you just spread it equally, it'd be 9,600 across each unit. I don't know if that's helpful or just more confusing, but the basic point is that there's levers you can, that you can adjust, 100%, reduction or some version of that. And And what what we're hoping to get today is just some general sense of things that you want to explore maybe further. And, we could go back and look at things in more detail and present that when we come back to the council with a more refined proposal in the, in this, especially in the affordable housing realm. And I think, so with affordable housing recommendations, the base recommendation is impact fees be 100% eliminated by policy and market rate developments for deed restricted affordable housing units only. They must meet the city's RENA allocation, no more than approximately 15% rounded to the fractional unit as these things go. And the primary reason there is to preserve funding. So, if they go over that, we don't continue to eliminate fees. There would be, if there are sufficient funds in the inclusionary housing or linkage funds to backfill, so it would be based on the value of that available money. Impact fees to be reduced or waived by the city council on a case-by-case basis for 100% affordable projects. No predefined program sunset, but would pause if there are insufficient funds available in the inclusionary housing or linkage funds. Fees would be eliminated on a unit-by-unit basis, so not project-wide at the time of building permit issuance. This is vertical construction. But it does present some of these certainty and timing issues that I mentioned earlier. So some things to consider are for fee amounts, obviously the council could, if the council generally likes that structure overall, you also could consider lower fee amounts rather than 100% if you want to make it spread further. Maybe only target certain levels of affordability. So like some jurisdictions do that rather than across all three levels. The low, very low, or the very low, low, and moderate, you could target certain levels of affordability. And you could potentially only eliminate certain development impact fees rather than all fees. So those are all options that, for discussion and further consideration. On certainty, so from a development certainty perspective, if we do, if the council were to do like an allocation system, you could potentially do that at time of entitlement, where you sort of pre-allocate, but maybe have a window on it. So you have to use the allocation within 12 months or 18 months or some short time frame so that they don't sit on the allocations. There's a similar concept in like water credits and there's other parallel programs that exist. But basically, that's one way to do it. If you want to not capture the existing entitled projects, I mean, that would be the implication. So existing entitled projects wouldn't necessarily have that because it would be credited at time of entitlement with some limited term for that. The other way to do it is to do it, similar to how some of the other jurisdictions do it, and they put a time bounding on it. So you don't pre-allocate, but you put a time bounding. So if you have an existing entitled project, they could obviously qualify for those. Not just projects that we don't know about yet. So if you're an existing entitled project and you put a time bound on it, Santa Rosa did a 3-year time bound. The county did a 2-year. It could be, literally whatever, I think whatever reasonable amount of time the council would want to consider. So, I mean, I wouldn't recommend anything less than 12 months for a time bound, but you could do it like a 12 or 24 or some period of time where you don't bound it by the amount of money in the fee funds, but you bound it by time. The shorter the amount of time, the less overrun we would have before the council could reconsider the policy. I guess that's the punchline. is that if you do a 12-month, you could just allocate credits as they come through the door. And then if the fee fund is expended or not, you would know at 12 months or however expended you are. If you stretch that out, then that time frame could be longer, or you could have a longer time frame with check-ins. But that doesn't, if the council could turn it off at an arbitrary point during that time frame, I think it'd be harder from a development perspective to have that certainty that you need to take it, confidently to a lender and say, I'm good. These credits apply to me. I have 12 or 24 or however many months to get this project in the ground. And the bank would lend on that basis. So anyway, there's a lot there to consider, but I will just stop and happy to answer any questions on these policy recommendations.
Great. On either the lodging impact fee or the residential affordable housing impact fee. Any questions for staff on that?
On the lodging, I'm trying to put it into some type of a storybook problem kind of a thing. So, is there a specific like data numbers we have for what lodging would fall into per square foot? Is that like a considered industrial or mixed or
It's commercial.
commercial?
Yeah.
Okay. Have we done anything with this hotel as an example? If it ran the market occupancies, how long would it take to pay back what we would be giving away in impact fees?
Yeah, so it would be, I mean, these are approximate numbers.
sure.
I'd have to, and honestly, I just have an approximate number for our current impact fee calculation. I'd have to calculate it under a new,
Mhm.
these new fees.
Mhm.
But it would be, it'd be roughly 3 years
Okay.
to pay
Okay.
it back. It's a relatively short time frame.
Yeah. And will we recalculate that when we get our new fees to kind of make sure it's about the same or?
Yeah, if the council wants, I could run some scenarios next time we all talk about this.
I think that would help to conceptualize what we're doing on the hotel.
Sure.
Portion.
Yep.
Any other questions? Councilmember Harvey.
Damien, do we have any feedback from the jurisdictions that have implemented this as to whether or not it has gotten projects off the ground? I mean, as you point out, we entitle like crazy and stuff sits there for decades.
So the county is really new. They just basically implemented their program. This year, Santa Rosa is a little bit older, like last winter, like November of last year. So I haven't gotten any real data from them yet. I think they're in the middle of their construction season now, so I don't know yet how much it encouraged additional units to come online. Petaluma's program, because there's no time horizon on it, and I don't think it's going to speed up anything. And it's also 100% affordable, which have they kind of run on their own timescales, which is different than the market rate, sort of mixed inclusionary projects. But I guess the short answer is I don't have any direct feedback yet from those jurisdictions.
And is the reason that you wanted to cap the fee elimination at 15% to kind of keep it in line with our 15% that we ask for on inclusionary housing? Is why
Yeah,
you didn't go to 20 or 25 to kind of encourage more affordable units?
yeah, it's because that's what our inclusionary policy is, 15%. That's part of it. Part of it is also, we do have a limited amount of backfill money, and so I just don't know, how creative someone gets just to, trying to run down that balance to zero quicker, and so we can spread it across more projects.
And did I hear you correctly? I could have written the numbers down wrong. You said that after Redwood Row was in there, we would have 17 very low, 21 low, and did you say 7 moderate? Did I get that right? So
7 moderate, yeah.
did I? Okay, I did write that. So when you say that one of the options for us is to encourage things aligned with our RENA numbers, looking at possibly the very low and low, which also tends to be the most difficult to get built, we are within our capabilities to highlight those. Because we seem to get, as noted in what's in the table, we seem to get a lot of moderate, and we seem to have a problem with the others a little bit. Remaining, right, yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah.
So we have very few remaining moderates, but we have quite a few, if you will, remaining very low and low. So,
Yeah, I mean, the caveat, of course, is that assumes these entitled projects actually go forward and build.
correct,
Um,
yeah.
But I mean, there is some rationale there to say when you're trying to develop an inclusionary project, the more affordable the deed restricted unit is, the more heavily subsidized it is. So, I mean, there is some, rationale there for potentially skewing skewing it to the lower income categories,
Right,
if
thank
the
you.
council wants to do that.
All right, any more questions? Just
I
questions?
like that idea,
Go
some
ahead.
type of a sliding scale. If it's very low, it's 100%, and then others 90 and another
Just
70.
questions. We're not liking anything right now. Okay, so I'm going to open the public comment and we're going to start on Zoom with this one. And I will remind people that our city council rules give people who turn in speaker cards the last word. So I'm going to take hands before I read off the speaker cards, and I'm giving the first person who turned in a speaker card the last word. All right, let's check with Zoom.
Thank you, Mayor Ford. Zoom attendees, if you'd like to make a public comment on this item, please use the raise hand icon. Seeing no hands, that will end the Zoom portion of public comment. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll remind people there are three pieces to this item. There's the Nexus study that moves us to a square footage based impact fee. And that includes all of the comparisons with neighboring jurisdictions, et cetera. There's the ordinance that moves our inflationary adjustment for all of them to the same index, and also addresses deferral of fees to occupancy. And then there's the policy questions about a future decision, not a decision we're making tonight, but input for a conversation we're going to have to give feedback to craft a future decision about potentially modifying lodging or affordable housing impact fees in the future. So addressing any of those. Is there anybody who didn't submit a speaker card who wishes to speak? Okay, not seeing anybody. We'll go to Omar Lopez.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Omar Lopez. I'm the Senior Program Associate at Generation Housing. We want to thank the city for the work that has gone into right-sizing development impact fees in compliance with state law, and for being the first jurisdiction, at least to our knowledge, to bring forward a right-size AB 602 compliant Nexus study. So we want to thank you and your staff for doing that. We are in support of staff's recommendation to accept said study tonight. You guys heard a little bit about the switching gears. You guys heard about that program to potentially waive or reduce fees. Generation Housing kind of led the move to get the county and Santa Rosa to get to do their programs. And so I do have a little update. The county is currently working with one project that is looking at using this or their program. It's still in early talks, so nothing has been set yet. What we have seen is that development overall has slowed down in the last year or so, especially with affordable housing. We've seen a lot of affordable housing developers move to buying and flipping existing structures versus doing whole new structures, which has slowed down just development overall. I do want to highlight, and I think this was kind of touched on, that during your fifth RHNA cycle, the last RHNA cycle, you guys outperformed in every category except very low income. That was the one category you guys did not meet the RHNA requirement. And then as you guys were talking about, you're still lagging on that a little bit. And so that is an area that does need a little bit more support to get to your goals. As you look at your TOT tax, I did want to highlight something Healdsburg does, where they take a percentage of their TOT tax and put it towards their housing, affordable housing developments. So that could be a consideration if you're interested in additional revenues to fund that program, if you do move forward with that program. And that's it. We urge you guys to adopt that. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks so much. Next is Abby Arnold.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. It's a pleasure to be here with you tonight. I am a resident of Santa Rosa, and when I retired, I decided that I wanted to devote my time that I had on my hands, now that I'm retired, to being an advocate for more housing. It's such a crisis in California, here in Sonoma County, and throughout the United States. It's clear that more housing needs to be built. Reducing or eliminating impact fees is an important way to make affordable housing projects possible. You have your infrastructure already, your streets are there, cetera. And it won't be used if the city remains small and exclusive. Just to give you one example that we're facing in Santa Rosa right now, lack of families means that there's no enrollment in the school enrollment is declining. And so with no children, the schools end up shrinking and even closing. And so there are long-term impacts from not building enough housing. I ask you to remove the impact fees for affordable housing and reduce the barriers to building new housing in Cotati. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Lori Alderman.
Well, being one of the few citizens who read the whole agenda packet, I found out why Damien Obid intercepted the article that the North Bay Business Journal reporter had contacted me about on the status of the Cotati Hotel and how it had been for at least 6 months sitting. This is not the only first. I gave her Ken Molinaro's, the reporter, Ken Molinaro's one. I put them together. And this is not the first time he's done this. If you remember 2 years ago, I tried to bring up this cost overage on the functional exchange agreement. And instead they came out with a PRA stalkers article. My family got threats because of Damien's interference. Now he's done it again. With this reporter, I had given her all facts and it turned into a fluff piece. Having no hotel impact piece for 3-star hotels, that would, all the Cotati Hotel would have to do was change ownership and get a new LLC, and they could have all their impact fees taken out. This is unacceptable and impacts the citizens of Cotati immensely for a hotel project that has already cost the citizens at least $1 million for a cost overage on the functional exchange agreement and also part of the P1 sewer project that we are paying back to the Affordable Housing Fund. People on social media are writing Cotati citizens and saying, thank you for the parking rights that you guys paid for. And you won't even acknowledge that $1 million in 2 years. Enough of the city manager selling us as citizens. We need to know the truth. And believe me, the truth is out there. I've been giving documents on the functional exchange agreement, the cost event on social media. Everybody, I get 2,000-3,000 hits on Nextdoor for telling the truth, which is not something that is happening here. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that exhausts the speaker cards. So we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to council for discussion. So I'm going to ask that we talk about these pieces separately. First, let's talk about the Nexus study for the impact fees and any discussion anybody has about the report and the new proposed impact fee schedule. Vice Mayor Loomis.
Well, I like that it's streamlined and I feel like it adds some transparency too, so that people know, in the past, when I look at the development impact fees, are all kind of hodgepodge of different pieces kind of put together, but at least this one streamlines it, makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, I'm okay with the changes to the fees. It concerned me a little bit that it was going up for the single family house prototype that was originally shown in the packet, but then seeing how it breaks down by square foot, I felt a little bit more comfortable with that, and they seem to be in line with the fees in other communities. So I don't have any issue with the Nexus study.
Right.
I think we've been talking for a little bit about kind of making the fees kind of match the size of housing development and stuff like this. And I feel like this impact study and changing to square foot, it really gets us leaps and bounds to kind of actually achieving that. So I feel like it's a step in the right direction.
But I think it's very compelling as well to go to the square footage and making it all more transparent.
Great. And I'd like to say, I'm, given the 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, and 2,500 square foot impact fee summaries, I was not sorry to see the cost of building a 2,500 square foot house go up. We need to be building fewer 2,500 square foot houses and more 1,000 and 1,500 square foot houses, in my opinion. So I was happy to see the 1,000 and 1,500 foot impact fees go way down. So it feels like we're ready to, let's see, adopt. I'm going to propose that we just go ahead and vote on these as we have the discussion rather than waiting to the end to do all three. Is that okay? Okay. Go ahead. Absolutely.
I hear what you're saying on the larger houses. But one of the things that I think we've seen in the newest development that has been brought forth to us is those are inclusive of an ADU and JADU. So how does that play into that when it's all in the same box?
Yeah, it's, I mean, it would be based on the square footage. So broadly speaking, based on the square footage. If, in the case of ADU, so we're talking, so if you have a JADU, it's all part of the same box. It's all the square footage is calculated as a single like thing. Is my understanding as to how that would work. And then the ADU, if it's 750 square feet or less, impact fees as a matter of state law cannot be applied of any type. So if it's bigger than 750 square feet, then it would be just applied as on the square footage basis.
So my recollection of the housing development that was brought forward to us had the ADUs in the box with it. So will that square footage get deducted? Because those are bigger, as the mayor points out, but they're inclusive of an ADU.
Yeah, we'd have to look at, I mean, if it meets the definition of an ADU, then it'd be calculated
Okay.
like an ADU.
And what is the distinction between a JADU and an ADU? Is it within the footprint of the house versus separate structure?
I mean, conventionally, that's the definition is the JADUs, basically a separately entranced part of the main structure. That's a separate unit, separately entranced and separate unit within the main structure, as opposed to an ADU, which is typically physically separate structure from the main structure.
So in the scenario that Councilmember Harvey's asking about, if that's correct, then then ADUs that are actually contained within the house are actually JADUs, and they would be part of the impact fee.
I believe so. Yeah,
calculation.
I mean, it would come down to the definition of an ADU versus a JADU as to how the fees would apply. But if it meets the definition of a JADU, it would just be square footage. of the-
Yeah, I'd kind of like to understand that because that whole development is then therefore impacted by that because the design that they came up with in order to, I believe, to kind of keep things,
Yeah.
kind of compact, they put I thought they were calling them ADUs. They were putting them in the box with a separate entrance, so.
And I mean, so one of the things we can do is we can look into that specific scenario or just in generally too, how, just confirming
Okay.
my impression of how they would apply when we come back.
Yeah.
And tell you exactly how it would work.
Because I hear what you're saying about larger houses, but if from a footprint perspective, the ADU is kind of attached in there, I wouldn't want to necessarily penalize people that way.
Yeah, it's a good point. On the flip side, I don't want calling it a JADU and then not renting it out and just using it as part of the main house as being an end run around impact fees for a big house. And that would be easy to do because JADUs also often have an internal connection to the rest of the house, so.
Right, and my recollection on these is they don't. on the plans that I think we saw at one point, but I mean,
That's my recollection as well.
yeah,
It's
they had. they
Externally
were-
entranced, not in.
Yeah.
internal.
Maybe
But-
that would make it an ADU, not JADU.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure this answer doesn't affect whether we adopt the Nexus study and impact fees, correct?
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Vice Mayor Lemus.
Yeah, I just had a question. I'm not sure if it applies to this. Additions like remodels, would that trigger square footage if someone remodeled and added to it? That's not a JDU, but maybe adding bedrooms or something.
Yeah, so it's an interesting policy, policy question. So, I mean, on the face of it, if you add a wing to a house or, like a new square footage, you'd pay impact fees on the incremental increase. That's normally how that would work. Right now, I guess, it would be something that we probably should give more thought to also though, because it certainly would be an easy conversation for any houses permitted under this new fee structure, but we're taking an existing fee structure where it's like unit-based or meter size based and like an older house. And then how would you apply that fee structure, which is what your question is.
So that might come back maybe at the next meeting or something.
Yeah, we can put put our heads together and
Okay.
think a little bit more deeply about that, about how that would work, particularly for existing building stock. I mean, new building stock, they were permitted under a square footage based fee. And so it's easy enough to say, if you bump out your structure, you're just paying the incremental increase in impact fee. But when it was originally permitted under a meter size or a unit count, it's not 100% clear, but I think there's some policy options there that the council can consider.
Okay, any more on this first piece of this, which is, now it is the resolution revising the traffic impact fee, the sewer connection fee, the water connection fee, and the parks and recreation fee, and adopting a general plan fee, replacing the downtown specific plan recovery fee, and making associated findings. Is that resolution in the packet?
Yeah.
Do you have a page? Because I can't find
It
it.
should be in the packet.
I believe it's page 296.
296. Thank you. Yes, good. Between the presentation and the study. Great, thank you. Okay, so I think we've covered everything. No, so would anybody like to move this resolution?
Sure, I make a motion that we revise the traffic impact fee, the sewer connection fee, the water connection fee, and the parks and rec fee, adopting a general plan fee, replacing the downtown specific plan recovery fee, all based on the development impact nexus study update, and make the associated findings required by the Mitigation Fee Act.
Second.
Point of order. Do we need to close the public hearing?
Did I thought I did that,
Do that?
but I will close it again if I didn't. Thank you.
Can I make the motion again? or-
No,
Okay.
we're good on the motion. But we do need a second.
Second.
Okay, I'm going to ask for a roll call vote on that.
Councilmember Savage,
Yes.
Councilmember Sparks,
Yes.
Councilmember Harvey,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Lemus.
Yes.
Mayor Ford.
Yes. Okay, thanks. Now on to the second part, which is an ordinance to move most development impact fees to a single inflationary index and defer many residential impact fees to occupancy. And that's on packet page 358. We had very little discussion and no public comment about this one. Any discussion?
So moved.
Is there a second for that? Page 350. Okay, it's moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that carries unanimously. All right, so now on to the policy discussion about lodging and affordable housing impact fee changes to the fees we just approved. So these fees we just approved, there's a 60-day waiting period, and during that time, we can do things like decide to reduce some of them. All right, so let's talk lodging first. Comments about the proposal to remove impact fees for lodging and make those funds whole through transit occupancy tax.
And I just want to clarify what I thought I heard, and that was that replacement of those funds would happen in approximately 3 years from the TOT.
Yeah, I mean, that was some initial estimates, but
Okay.
as discussed, when we come back, I'll
Okay.
have a more thorough analysis so the council can look at
Okay.
that. Yeah.
And the proposal is this only apply to 3-star or higher
Mhm.
lodging. Okay.
And so we're considering whether we would make that a standing situation, they would know. My only question about that is there's a lot of negotiations that go on in these developments, and there's always a lot of asks from the developers. And I think, would it be best to keep this as an ask that we could then give if we need to give? Or should we lay all of our cards out, straight on? I mean, I think it's probably maybe 3% of the construction cost of a 3 or 4-star hotel. So I don't know if it's going to be that, important to whether a deal comes or doesn't come. I think there might be other things that would be more critical to whether a deal comes or doesn't come.
Yeah, so I didn't really discuss this during the presentation, but I looked statewide at essentially every hotel incentive program that exists in the state. And a lot of them, especially the ones that require some sort of discretion. What the implication is, if the council has to individually reduce the fees or eliminate fees, then it would likely trigger prevailing wage, which makes it a it makes the incentive not something worth pursuing.
Mhm.
So, because it adds more than that to the cost of the project.
But I thought we were kind of at prevailing wage just because of all the other requirements that are made to a project.
No, it's, that's affordable housing, 100% affordable housing. That would fall into that category,
Okay.
but lodging wouldn't. They're just market-based,
Mhm.
market-based. So if it became a prevailing wage job, the incentive would be more than offset by the cost of the increase.
Mhm.
So it just wouldn't be worth the
Okay.
incentive. So that's why, as a matter of policy, it would have to be a matter of policy. Otherwise, it wouldn't be worth it. And I will say too that the way, at least the way that staff has been looking at this is the value of the value of the incentive. So if, whether it's affordable housing or any other development type like lodging in this case, even if we, reduce or eliminate, we're still going to be calculating what the actual fees would be. So, because, that's how we would backfill with other funds. So we have to track all that. And so because we're doing that, it would generate a dollar amount. So the impact fee waiver in whatever development we're talking about would be an X dollar amount. And if a developer of any type came to us and said, hey, we want some additional incentives of some type, you already know, the council will already know this is the value of things that we've already provided.
Mhm.
And then you have the conversation about, is there anything else that the council is interested in doing with already knowing what's already been provided? You know what I mean? So you wouldn't be negotiating against yourself because you already know sort of what incentive has been provided in this case. So if anything else is asked at any point in the process, you already know
Okay.
what the value of that previous give was. So you can negotiate anything additional based on that knowledge.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Just to clarify that the financial impact for the lodging recommendation would be on occupancy, not before that. Once it starts being occupied, and then 3 years after that to recover the funds? Yes, okay, just clarify.
The recovery would begin once they start hosting
Filling beds,
Yeah.
customers. Yeah,
That's right. The
right,
occupancy,
right.
the occupancy would be the start of the recovery period.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just a comment about that. We did put some money into this concept already with the park and ride. And so, I recall discussions at that time where we were thinking about the payback time of that. And so if we're saying 3 years payback time, the TOT, it's not really 3 years, it's 3 years plus the payback time for what we've already put into it. So we're kind of banking on the idea that the hotel's going to be a success and actually generate the TOT. So that's just something that I'm thinking about and keeping in mind as we discuss this. And I'm sort of okay with doing the removing those fees, because if the hotel doesn't build, we're not going to be granting them anyway. So so it's sort of hypothetical. And hopefully it will work out. But I'm personally not going to be inclined to offer very many more incentives, because it's such a lot that we've done already.
And I want to point out, this is a general policy discussion, not about this hotel.
Sure. Yes, I guess there could potentially be other lots
Right.
that develop hotels on them
Right.
in the future, and the same
Right.
kind of idea would apply. Yeah.
Okay, so let's move to does anybody have any other feedback they want to give staff for crafting a proposal that will come back later on the lodging impact fee issue? Okay, let's move to the affordable housing impact fee discussion.
Well, I was just saying, I think a sliding scale for the different levels of low income would be appropriate, I think, to help incentivize the lowest levels. Yeah.
Councilmember Sparks, I saw your hand next.
Yeah, I have several thoughts about the affordable housing policy. I am very supportive of doing anything we can to construct affordable housing. I want to be real clear about that. So these thoughts are more strategic. We have a limited amount of affordable housing fund, and what can we do with it? One of the things we have seen develop successfully in Cotati are single family subdivisions with affordable units spread throughout those developments. Those have been built. And so I'm a little wary of committing to waive all of the development fees for single family projects when I'm not convinced that that's going to result in more affordable units being built, since those are already being successfully built in Cotati. Also, when we look at in the staff report, there's a great breakout of how many units we can get if we deplete our entire affordable housing fund. And if they're all big single family units, we don't get very many units out of it. And those are units that might build already. So we have not had a lot of good success in building multifamily developments in Cotati. Those are the lots that have sat vacant for years and years and years. So I'd be more inclined to apply the, I don't know, I'm sorry, I'm saying the wrong term. Fee waiver is not the right term, but to eliminate the impact fees for multifamily developments to make those more likely to pencil out and actually get built. And then I would like to see for single family developments, if we wanted to raise the cap and say, okay, you have to build 15% affordable, but then if you build beyond that, then we could eliminate the fees for those. And also we could consider in single family developments only doing it for the RHNA categories that we're having the most trouble with, that are beyond their requirements. If they have to build one very low, for example, if they built a second very low, then we could waive the fee for that one. But I'm kind of skeptical of the, of just eliminating these fees in single family developments. I feel like that there have been so many things we've been able to do proactively with our affordable housing fund, like renovating the Wynwood project to preserve housing and purchasing the land at 120 East Cotati. Those are, who knows what opportunities might come up in the next 5 or 10 years. And if we deplete all of that fund, building single family units that might have been built anyway, I don't know that that's the best use of the funds. So I'm a little skeptical.
Can I ask a question? I just want to ask a question along those lines. Is there any kind of thing that we could put in here to lower the square footage of that affordable housing from, I know we talked about 2,500 before, to maybe 1,500, 1,800 or something? So maybe then those affordable housing monies would go further?
Certainly could. Certainly could. I did note that that number in the staff report was based on 2,500 square foot. And I would bet the inclusionary units we've got are not getting built at 2,500 square feet. That's just a guess, but so we probably, it'll go a little farther.
Yeah,
than
I
what
think the
staff
ones
report-
in Kesting were about 1750.
Yeah, that
something like
sounds about right. Anybody else want to go next? Councilmember Harvey.
Yes, I do have some concerns about having no sunset on there. I would like to see some form of bounds on there because what we've seen in the past with the entitlements that we get is they sit there for decades. So I want some kind of bounds on there. And I too am concerned about, depleting that and stretching it as long as they have. I think you said something about time bounding things at 24 months. I mean, we need to see vertical, as you put it, because I don't want to tie up those commitments to the same developers that just sit there and don't build. I mean, either that or, really making it be a pilot and coming back and saying, okay, did this really get people off the fence? Or was it just wishful thinking that we would like them to get off the fence? But I'm with you. I'm willing to try anything, but I also don't want to put policy out there that's going to commit us for the long term and find out that it did nothing.
I'm in line with Councilmember Sparks as well. I'm more interested in a program that would help get some of the multifamily off the dime, get it built. So in terms of how to structure it, I like the sort of granting at entitlement with a 24-month or whatever staff thinks is appropriate, 24-month, time limit to pull vertical building permits. I'm fine with that. And any extension requires council approval. So I think we have mechanisms for extending entitlement. We do it regularly and that doesn't come back to us. But I'd like if somebody comes back to us and says, I'm ready to pull building permits in a month, we're going to grant the extension of the fee waiver, but not if there's nothing happening. And so that gives us it feels like some kind of mechanism to put some time pressure on that fee waiver with a possibility for extension, but they have to show good faith and progress.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, they're asking us to provide them with certainty in order to get their lending. We want a reciprocal certainty that they're actually going to build. So, I mean, it's a two-way street. So they can't get all of the certainty so that they can go out to their lenders and leave us hanging there. We need that certainty back that they're going to actually build.
And the reason is because if they're not, we need to use that money to get something else built.
Exactly.
Right.
Move on to the next.
Right. So the 100% affordable, I'm fine leaving as, that's an ask because that's already a public monies project. And so that, our impact fee waivers just fold into that public funds discussion. But for some of these multifamily that are, mixed market rate and affordable, I'd like to see what we can do to incentivize them. I would not be opposed to using the fee waivers for up to 1,500-foot duplexes and single families, whatever, some sort of, I do like the idea though of somehow limiting single family uses to things that really help us get to the categories of housing that we're most in need of. So I guess I'm pretty much in alignment with Councilmember Sparks. Other feedback for staff? Okay. Do you have what you need?
Think so. Is there, I guess there's one question. So it sounds like the The general direction is to focus on the multifamily, mixed multifamily type, development type, as opposed to single family.
At least two of us said primarily that with I'm open to
Mhm.
very targeted use in single family, especially for building, over the 15% requirement. So if they want to provide 20%, then I'd certainly be open to, fee waivers as a matter of policy for anything over the required 15%, if it's meeting our RENA categories, RENA needs. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the way you put it. It's sort of like the 15 is the baseline, but if you're willing to go up above that, then we can consider it. If you're looking at 20 or 25, maybe,
Well, except we wouldn't consider it. I mean, we'd consider it when we set the policy, right?
Right,
Not on a
yes.
case, not on a
Right,
development.
right, yeah.
Okay,
as part of the policy.
right.
You pick the number 20%, 25, whatever
Yeah.
it.
Okay, with some, I assume with some, I don't know why a developer would just like build 70% affordable or something, but that, there's just that financial,
Right.
maybe it's not even a realistic scenario, but maybe with some upper bound on the total number. I don't know, before it has to come to council for a conversation. The implication is it could just pull a bunch of money out of the inclusionary fund if someone, by
Right.
policy, if someone comes in.
Right.
All right.
Go ahead.
But I don't think that would be profitable for them. So
Yeah, it might
I
be
mean,
a
it would still
totally,
be losing money on, the difference in the fees is not going to make up selling it at market rate versus.
yeah,
low income.
granted, it could be a totally hypothetical, not possible situation, but
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so then also in terms of the duration, I heard, well, I heard that we don't want to have it just open-ended. There has to be some sort of time bound on it. I heard that that it sounds like, one option is to commit it at entitlement. So once they get entitled, they have a certain amount of time. I guess the question, if that's the preference to look more into with crafting a policy, then the question would be for any existing entitled projects we already have, do we want to include them in a program like that? Or do we want to just wait for new entitled projects? Or do you have a preference?
Well, I would say I think many of our existing entitled projects, we haven't seen them built yet. So if our goal is to make sure that these things get built, then it seems to me to make sense to apply the new standards to entitled projects. But I also had a question, which is as far as the proposed idea of granting the 24-month timeframe when it's entitled, is that something that you could reach out to some developers and see what they think about that? Would that structure work with their financing? Like, would that actually help with their financing? And is the 24 months the right number, or should it be shorter or longer than that? Not necessarily developers that we're dealing with, just some people in the community who are very familiar with how the nuts and bolts of all of this works, just to help us.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can definitely just test that time frame and
Great.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Councilmember Harvey. So if we applied it to existing, then it would apply as of the date of the policy, whatever time horizon we put on it. So that means that some existing entitled could have longer because they've already been sort of hanging around for a bit.
We wouldn't backdate their 24 months. Is that what you're saying? We'd start
I
the
mean,
24 months now.
We could, but it would run into the issue of how long do you really need to get a project off the ground and into.
Right.
And I am concerned about leaving this open-ended. I kind of would like it reevaluated at some period of time, because you know how policies are, kind of like we had the dog park pilot and it's still there. So I'd rather kind of reevaluate it at some time frame.
So would you like to call it like a 3-year pilot? Like, is
Yeah.
it Santa Rosa's, or I forget who has a 3-year pilot, but
It's Santa Rosa.
yeah.
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 And maybe it'll be successful and maybe it won't, but then at least we can, kind of decide what we want to do.
Right, because yeah, right. If it's not producing units, we need to figure out
Something
a better
else.
use for that fund to actually
And,
produce
and a
affordable housing.
different policy.
Right, right.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's act now, for those projects that are entitled, like act fast, otherwise,
That's right.
the sale will be over.
Right. Okay, got what you need?
Yeah, I guess, the only thing I wanted to retest with you all is the idea of, the different inclusionary, categories. Is there any particular preference to heavily subsidizing certain categories or just apply it across the board?
Well, Councilmember Savage had talked about some, sort of a sliding scale to
Potentially sliding scale,
incentivize.
Any scale, I think, starting with
But
the
that-
lowest.
Yeah, so the issue for me with that is that, as we saw in the table, at least as it was in the packet, I know it's been updated, we had a lot more very low in the pipeline than lower or moderate, partly because there are a lot of sources of funding that are dedicated to very low. And so I like targeting the fee waivers to where we actually need to build the units. I know we get to up count. I think we get to up count in RENA categories, right? If we overproduce very low, they sort of count up the chain. I think that's right.
Well, you mentioned something of one city where once they meet the arena, they cap it. And I don't know if that could be
Right.
something that would impact the sliding scale as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'd be open if staff has some clever way to focus the incentive in the RENA categories where we're most in need. And I just leave it at,
The need of the
Mhm.
need.
yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'd be in favor of keeping the keeping it open, kind of agnostic towards which RENA category it is for multifamily. Because my concern is not just to get the affordable units built, but to get the market rate units built too. And so I see, because we just need more housing. So I see for the multifamily developments, even if we're meeting our RENA goals, I see that incentive as a way to help get all of that housing, some of which might be more affordable by design, out onto the market. Whereas for the single family, I think it makes sense to target it to the RENA levels that we don't have met yet. So that's how I'm thinking about it.
So are you suggesting we have the three categories here that you want to defer for market rate? Did I hear you just say?
No, I'm sorry.
You use that word and that, I'm like, oh.
Well, I'm just saying that what we've seen historically in Cotati is these market rate developments with inclusionary units that the whole project just never builds.
Right.
And that if you look at the entire fee deferral for the market, for the for the affordable inclusionary units as helping the entire project to
Okay,
pencil
all right,
out.
that's fine.
That's what I want to
You,
see.
you threw me when you said for the market rate and I'm like, oh. that's-
Sorry, I may have
we'll-
misspoken.
We'll use that fund quick.
I can understand that, and maybe that's fine, given that our inclusionary requirement now is tied to our RENA needs, right? Isn't that how our inclusionary?
So it's not a
works now?
third anymore. It's
Right.
tied to our arena need. Yeah.
So it shouldn't happen that somebody is, in order to meet their inclusionary requirement, building moderate units when we don't need moderate units, right? It just shouldn't happen. So maybe we don't need to duplicate the structure of the inclusionary requirement. Maybe that already takes care of it. Yeah, you all think about it.
Yeah, no, I think I have a lot, so that's,
Okay.
it's great. And I can obviously come with some options too to think further about when we come back.
Right. Okay, are we good to move on from that agenda item? Anybody need a brief break? Are we okay to go on? Okay, we'll continue. Thank you to those of you who came for that item. Obviously, some of it will come back in the future. Item 7C, consideration to adopt resolution establishing the outstanding backflow testing charges from fiscal year 2024-25 and levying of assessments. Start with the staff report.
Mayor and members of the council, Craig Scott, Public Works Director, City Engineer. This item comes before council every year. It's a way for the city to recoup costs of backflow devices that are not tested as per state requirements. So we have backflow devices which protect our drinking water system from contamination from pumps, equipment, whatever might cause higher pressure and water to flow backwards through our system. And there are costs associated with annually testing those. We have an ordinance number 773, which puts that burden of cost on the property owner. And this year we have a list of 47 properties that have not paid for certifications. Back on the last meeting, July 8th, we the city council passed a resolution to set today as a public hearing to make these assessments. The assessments have not only the certification cost to test the backflow, but it has an administration fee of $37 and then a penalty for being late of $15. So that's all rolled up into those assessments. So that's basically the presentation. I'd be happy to respond to any questions you might have.
Any questions for staff? Councilmember Harvey.
How many do we have in total? Just to get an understanding of these 47, how many?
We have approximately 650 devices in the city. Yeah.
Right, thank you.
I couldn't remember.
All right. I don't see any more council questions, so we'll open the public hearing. Start with Zoom.
Thank you, Mayor Ford. Once again, Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a public comment on this item. Mayor Ford, there are no hands on Zoom. Thank you.
Okay, anybody in the room wishing to comment on the outstanding backflow testing charges? Not seeing anyone. We'll close the public hearing. Back to the council for discussion. Or a motion.
I make a motion that we approve a resolution establishing the outstanding backflow testing charges and directing the levying of assessments on the fiscal year 25-26 property tax rolls.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries unanimously. Okay. Thank you all. Move on to the regular agenda, item 8A, revised scope of services for the Highway 116 and West Cotati Avenue Safety Improvements Project. Start with the staff report.
Mayor, members of the council, once again, Craig Scott, to present this item, which is the design contract, professional services agreement with Mark Thomas for the Highway 116 West Cotati intersection safety improvements project. It's to make that intersection safer. And this goes back to, well, in recent history, October 2022, when this body approved a contract with another firm to perform environmental review and 35% of a traffic signal at that location. So, and then once that was complete, we had enough information to scope out a final design, resource permitting, all that. And so that was done in late 2024. The 35% was wrapped up maybe in May or June of 24, and then it took us a little while, and then we brought forward the final design in about October, design proposal in October 2024. Since that time, work has been progressing to on that design. So geotechnical, looking out, identifying the scope, the boundaries of the project, the lane design, the median design, the traffic signal design. This is all been gearing up for, and bear with me, I have to dive into the Caltrans process a little bit. So they have a streamlined process called the DEER, DEER, and it takes the place of a more involved process for interchanges and, large Caltrans projects that could take 3 or 4 years to get permitted. The DEER process looks for qualifications that make it a candidate for a more streamlined process. So it doesn't have a lot of involved right-of-way changes. There's no land being relinquished from, I think, Caltrans to the city and different things. So the consultants thought that this project was a really good candidate for that. So started preparing all of these different studies and reports in readiness for that. One of these reports used to be called ICE, which was the intersection control evaluation. But what happened was Caltrans, over time, they found that they were getting controls at intersections that they did not necessarily agree with, i.e. traffic signals, because it was all about operations. They wanted to weight safety, give it a higher weighting. So they came up with this process called ISOP, which is intersection safety and operations, with safety coming first, operations assessment, something. So that was the process we were going through, and that ISOP process looks at different alternatives. And you can't just walk in there with one preferred configuration control strategy and say, please approve it. The whole process is to come up with alternatives that can be evaluated for safety and operations against one another. That's when the traffic signal and a roundabout began to be evaluated in this ISOP Caltrans required process. During that time, because once you get that out of the ISOP, get an approved ISOP that says, here's your preferred alternative, then you're you're into the DEER process. You're into that lane, okay? During that effort, there's back and forth with the different divisions of Caltrans and city staff and our consultant. And we could see that there was no way the Caltrans would approve a traffic signal. We couldn't there was no matter of timing for the signal or the configuration of the turn lanes or the median to make it as safe as a roundabout. So here we are where what did I say, back in October 2022? So we're approaching 3 years into this, and we have this change of direction from a traffic signal, which is about 65% designed, to a roundabout, which is only about 10% or just conceptual at this point. So there is an impact. So we requested an amended proposal. There's work that we could maintain, we could retain and keep, that's value, but there's about $100,000 of work that been making this change we can't make use of, and about a year of project delay. I went back and looked at the original project schedule, and we had, just as a milestone, March 3rd of 2026 in the original as being, hey, we're out to bid for this project. That date is now March 3rd, 2027. So there's real implications to this, but we're biting the bullet. It doesn't seem like the city has a choice on this. There are other examples around the state where this has happened, where the local jurisdiction is preferring to go with the traffic signal, and Caltrans swoops in and they end up getting a roundabout. So that's where we are with this. And So we have a proposal, an amended proposal, and we're recommending moving forward with it. And what would happen is once we agree to a roundabout, we anticipate, we've been basically told directly by Caltrans that they will move us into the DERA process. So we know the path from here forward once we can go in this direction. Happy. Myself and the city manager, Damian Obed, will be happy to respond to any questions you might have.
Questions? Councilmember Sparks.
Thank you. I just had one question about something in the staff report at the bottom of page 375. It said Caltrans recognized the impact of the design change to the city and offered to partner with the city, including potentially including the completed intersection design and the repaving in 2028, but we're still responsible for pulling together the funding. Can you just explain a little bit more about what they're offering to do? I mean, what does it mean if they're including it, if we're still paying for all of it?
So there, do you want to?
Sure, I'll
take this?
I'll
Okay.
take this one. So, basically, the process unfolded like Craig described. So obviously, Highway 116 is a state facility. It's not a city road. And we went through the ISOP process, and they said, basically, a roundabout and a signal operate similarly, but the roundabout's going to be a safer intersection control alternative. And there's nothing you can do to a signal to make it as safe as a roundabout. So you might as well either you can try to continue to convince us to do it. I know this isn't answering your question yet.
Yeah, I
but
totally get
yeah.
that part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's how we ended up on this track, is Caltrans basically said, this is the only path forward if you want to do this. And I guess the reason why I was giving you some background is after like having this prolonged conversation about this issue, they felt bad for us, I guess, that they totally switched our project on us. And they said, we'd be willing to partner with you and work with you. And so I think that's a benefit. I guess a silver lining in this process is they expressed a desire to, I don't know if bend over backwards is the right term, but to work with us collaboratively to try to get our project delivered, including what was noted in the staff report, which is, hey, we're coming through here in 2028 with a paving project. If you guys get the design done, you can hand it to us and maybe we can incorporate it in. That was one of the possible options they provided us. There could be, I think they're also, I didn't say it in the staff report, but they're also looking for money if any money is available maybe. So I guess there's some mileage there potentially. Yeah.
But it sounds like basically we don't know what that'll mean for us, kind of. There's a potential that they'll
They haven't committed to
help
anything.
somehow with the costs.
They haven't committed to anything. So
Okay.
it's just
Potential.
yeah.
Okay, Vice Mayor Lemus.
Yes, I had a question. I had heard that the county is putting in a roundabout at Railroad. Is that in coordination with this paving project? Are they going to have 2028, or is that going separately?
No, that's a county facility. The county is doing that, whatever schedule they're doing it on. Caltrans is, as part of their maintenance work, they're doing some Highway 116 paving, including through Katati.
Okay, that's county, not Caltrans
Right.
versus 116's Caltrans.
Yeah, I know it's alphabet soup of agencies, but it's Caltrans.
Yeah, sorry, follow-up question. So if they were to do this during the repaving in 2028, would that be timely for the development of all of this housing, or how does that mesh with the timeline?
Redwood Row would have some improvements they'd have to make in advance if they want to, occupy their project as was entitled. CV, so Redwood Row with some encroachment level improvements could open their project. CV1 could also open their project with some frontage improvements and those kind of less intensive improvements. CV2 would not be able to move forward, and neither would anything else in the future until that intersection is improved.
Vice Mayor Lemus.
Does the ISO process, did it also determine whether there's enough space for the roundabout in it? Did they determine that too, or?
No. As a discussion point, a conceptual design was completed, but nothing to anything approaching even 30%. Just for the sake of having something to point at and getting our arms around what it could look like, what the implications are. But the city owning the property to the south does give us some flexibility to shift the roundabout location around a little bit to lessen the impact
Okay.
of what's already the entitled projects on the north side.
So the further work on the, that they're doing, the designing is going to determine the spacing and safety and everything.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I will say just on that geometry question, Caltrans did say that, I mean, there's only certain, so when you're doing intersection evaluations, only certain things from a geometry standpoint would disqualify a project. So if your right-of-way constraints are unmovable, basically, like maybe an example would be like you're in downtown San Francisco and you're surrounded by, 50-story buildings, and you're not going to take out a building to widen the intersections. That might be an example. That was the type of example they cited when they talked about right-of-way constraints.
Thank you.
Councilmember Harvey.
Does this kind of new wave thing with Caltrans have impact on some of the other projects that say were listed in our impact fee? Because I think that there was signalization efforts in some of those. Are they likely to kind of do the same thing with us?
Just on Highway 116.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Because I
Any-
think like Madrone
Yeah, I mean,
and
Caltrans is a matter of statewide policy for intersection controls. For operational safety reasons, as Craig said,
Okay.
roundabouts are going to be the preferred alternative unless there's an overriding operational issue, that would make it a substandard control method, or some overriding right-of-way geometry kind of issue. But otherwise, it's going to be, I mean,
Okay.
you can kind of assume as a matter of statewide policy, it's going to be.
Well, that's what I was sort of asking.
That's
Is
what they
that
s-
the direction that they're headed? Okay.
Yeah, if I get to add to that, I was talking to the consultant about this to get some clarity. If you think of 19th Avenue through the peninsula, where you've just got these sequenced lights and you have folks on either side that want to get across, then that is a poster's child for not putting a roundabout in. That's where you want to have the traffic signals put in. But in this case, we have 116. This person was making the argument, everybody feeding into that is getting onto 116. So there'd be this kind of a gridlock. I mean, I'm sorry. It's kind of new to us to think about roundabouts, but
Yeah, and basically the bottom line for this and on Highway 116 is when Caltrans evaluates it in the ISO process, they're operationally effectively equivalent to a signal from their perspective. Yeah. So therefore safety is the driving factor, which means it's a roundabout.
Okay, any more questions? All right, we'll open up for public comment. We'll start in the room. And the only person in the room has submitted a comment card, so come on forward.
You down at City Hall sure have been busy bees this past month. Now, it looks like there's going to be no public input to this change. You'll do an amendment, making it a roundabout so that Caltrans, you could get through Caltrans funding. The audacity of city staff to think that they can do this without any public input shows how out of control and desperate city staff are to cover years of mismanagement. My parents in 1977 were promised a lighted intersection in front of the council. Everybody for years, there's been talk of a roundabout, but everybody time, and it's been on the plans now, lighted intersection. That's how you sold it. City leaders campaigned last year that there were no roundabouts planned anytime soon to get the roundabout ban repealed. With only one sign and no money, the opposition received 1,499 votes to keep the roundabout ban. Despite all your efforts to make it physically about roundabouts, almost 15,000 citizens believe the other version. This was about safe and sane traffic planning, not about physical roundabouts. Now your city staff has shown that to these 1,500 people that their vote or voices don't matter. Have you told all the new housing developers about this change? For years, you have been selling this lighted intersection. A roundabout will work traffic-wise, but what about children crossing 116 to go to Thomas Page? There is only crosswalks at Redwood Drive and at Stony Point, and the kids are going to be entering in a Madrone. Believe me, it's already out there, very popular on social media with this of changing the emphasis to a roundabout. Not one person writing is in favor of one-lane roundabout there so far. You bet I'm getting the truth out there once again. Another concern neighbors had on West Cotati Avenue is a roundabout. People don't understand it. They end up in the West Cotati Avenue area, and we have blind turns and speed bumps and everything. And people speed through there. Our intersections are not, we have blind, it's just, and they'll figure out how to go downtown, bypass all that, and come through our neighborhood. So it's a big concern for the neighbors on that. Basically, I think you guys should wait. Caltrans, you promised this intersection for 50 years, ever since I was a kid. Lighted intersection, not roundabout. I don't mind roundabouts, believe it or not. I lived in Australia for 3 years and drove down the left side of the road and managed those roundabouts. It's that this is a bad idea. And there was going to be in 1990s, they were going to put a roundabout at Maple Avenue in West School, the smallest roundabout by Prue Draper's in my house. So, it's just about traffic planning and safety. How are those kids from all the developments going to get to school across the street? There was a huge, like a mom was beheaded going to, on Madrone. So that's why Caltrans put in that left-hand lane, and she was killed and kids were seriously injured. And a roundabout's it's good for cars, but what about and people are gonna come out of that roundabout too and go, oh, finally through the roundabout and speed up and hit Madrone.
Please wrap up. Your time's up.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't realize. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, let's check with Zoom.
Thank you, Mayor Ford. Once again, Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a public comment. Mayor Ford, that will end public comment.
Okay. And public comment, back to council for questions or discussion. Councilmember Harvey.
My understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but since this is a state highway, they never were part of our ordinance because it is state property. It's not city property. So we really don't have the ability to dictate to Caltrans what they can and can't build on state highway, correct?
That's correct. I mean, even if the roundabout ban was still in effect, the state can still build a roundabout there.
Okay.
Our local law has no bearing at all on the state and what they do on their facilities.
Okay. And that I didn't hear other than some discussion about some help that we're getting any funding from Caltrans. I didn't hear, did I miss?
There's no funding from, aside from maybe they'll find some funding. Currently there's no funding from Caltrans.
All right. And in the staff report, I believe I read that the developers are working with us on this and they do know about this.
They've been in the conversation and they're
Okay.
fine. I mean, they seem agnostic about the type of intersection.
Right. Now, they were not in the conversation with Caltrans, right? We talked to them afterwards, or were they part of the,
We talked to them all through the conversation.
okay,
They weren't in the same meetings with Caltrans, but they're fully aware of what's going on.
okay. All right. And I think I heard you say that from a traffic and planning perspective, Caltrans is the ones that are saying that this is a safer alternative. Did I miss that?
Yeah, Caltrans.
Okay. All right.
I think, I think with roundabouts, usually the issue is more operational if there's an issue. I mean, there's lots of data that says roundabouts are objectively safer in
Yeah.
almost any way. It's just operationally, does it work or not in a given situation?
Yeah, and I think, city manager, as I mentioned to you, I'm also concerned about people crossing 116, but it's hard for me to visualize without the design documents to really see how that will happen. So I'm interested in seeing how that will work, because I do want people, it is a highway. I want people to be able to safely get across there. So I'm sure that will come out in the next set of design documents, correct?
Yeah, we'll detail all that. We'll have to on how people would safely cross, or bicyclists as well.
All right, thank you.
Any more discussion?
Just going to reiterate what's Councilman Harvey said around the connectivity between the new construction and downtown has been a big focus as we've made this much progress. And when you hear them talk about safety, you wonder, are they looking equally at automobile safety as they are pedestrian safety? Or do they have a primary focus on automobile safety in their analysis?
Yeah, Caltrans is by policy complete street focused. Complete street meaning all users, all road users.
It'll be interesting to see how that connectivity will work. Yeah.
I'm having a hard time visualizing, but.
Okay, so anybody wish to make a motion that we approve the design agreement and amendment?
I make a motion that we approve the design agreement amendment with Mark Thomas for completion of the intersection design on Highway 116 at West Cotati Avenue, and authorize city manager to execute said amendment.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that carries unanimously. Thank you. So at this point, we'd like to stand to recite, I will say a land acknowledgement, and then we'll say together the Pledge of Allegiance. The city of Cotati recognizes that we're on the ancestral lands of the Coast-Miwok, who are the original caretakers of this area. We respectfully acknowledge the indigenous peoples who have been stewarding and maintaining a relationship on this land as knowledge keepers for millennia. This acknowledgement does not take the place of authentic relationships with indigenous communities, but serves as a gesture of respect to the land we are on. Now the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We will move on now to the city manager's report and council member reports. We'll start with the city manager.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. So the city, talking about funding, road funding, the city just submitted to the SCTCA. I feel like I need to do like the YMCA thing with that. But anyway, there was a grant. So the next cycle 2 of road funding, applications were due on Friday. We submitted, so the highest priority grant projects were 116 in West Cotati. So as the council knows, we already have $2 million. We put in for some additional money to try to get some additional funding and tried to lean heavy on this isn't even Cotati's money. This is a regional transportation network. And so, I mean, normally when those things get graded, they try to provide some sort of equity between jurisdictions. based on, you know, size, right? Like big jurisdictions typically get more grant money than smaller, but anyway, we're going to push hard on this isn't really for us. We're doing this for the region. I mean, we have some benefit, but we're doing it for the larger region. Valparaiso Avenue and Hellman paving project, which also includes a pathway, you know, between Delano and the Cotati Creek Bridge. So that's, those two are federal aid eligible, so they're one of the ones we asked for. And then sidewalk gap closures phase 2. So getting to the point about if you have an intersection control at 116 in West Cotati, where do they go from there? Where do people go? And right now, as the plan goes, you know, West Cotati would be realigned so they could get down there. They could get as far as Cohen Court, but then there's a gap. So one of the gaps is completing that. So in theory, if you're a child, you could go, once that gap is completely constructed, then you could go all the way up to Thomas Page to the back rather than walking along the shoulder of 116. So that's, I mean, that would be the route that children would take. And then those are the 3 highest priority. I won't bother you with anything beyond that because we'd be lucky to get all 3. But the way SCTCA did it this year is they had a very comprehensive application, asked, they were very, you know, they had questions about anything you can imagine on any project because they wanted this cycle to get just one application in that they could apply to every color of money that's out there rather than applying individually to different types of grants. So that way, just have like one big master, you know, like book for each project. And then that can be used for any color of money that comes up in this cycle. All right, project work is continuing to move forward at Putnam, and Sunflower Park, Putnam, is expected to be open to the public by the end of September, and Sunflower by end of the year, so basically early 2026. So once we get some schedule certainty on Putnam, we'll be talking about dates for ribbon cuttings and that kind of thing. So on some not super news, the bids on the street rehab project that we had out came in substantially higher than budget. So we're rejecting all bids, and we're going to look at what was driving that cost, and then we will rebid it in the winter, probably for spring construction. So just a heads up that project will get delayed a little bit. Some other projects that are coming up in the near future to the city council meeting. We have 120 East Cotati, the 100% affordable project. That's scheduled to go to planning commission in the middle of this month and then to council after that. We're looking at, with Putnam nearing completion, we're looking at updating and streamlining our park rules so that they're the same everywhere and getting rid of some old stuff, some old park rules. And then the microgrid project should be coming back for a conversation about if it's something we want to move forward on. And then also, just a heads up that that staff are in conversation with the multiple landowners about the downtown parking lot. This is the downtown public parking lot. The lease is coming up for, it's going to be expiring soon. So we're in conversation with the property owners there about extending that lease. So I would expect that we'll be back to council in the not too distant future on that. We just finished off a bunch of summer, very successful summer camps, including Camp Cotati, a robotics camp, farm camp, and theater camp. And some highlights included Camp Cotati trips to Heinz Signs to make custom stickers, a trip to Oliver's Market, visits to the Cotati Police Department, and trips to several of our parks. Robotics Camp invited Camp Cotati to watch their finale of a robot battle, and each week a farm camp finished with an open farm day for families in Camp Cotati to come play and see the great things that they were doing. Theater Camp put on a special performance for Camp Cotati as well, and we're looking forward to more camps coming back in the fall and winter, including Thanksgiving and winter break camps. So it's been a very busy summer. Cotati Kids Day was, excuse me, dynamite. It's kind of cheesy to say that, but it was a big success this year. Estimated 2,000 guests attending. We had a lot of fun activities and a lot of great vendors and resources at this year's event. We have a free new memoir writing class starting next week, and will continue on Tuesdays from 9:30 to 12:30 p.m. in the Thomas Page Room. It's free to attend, as I mentioned, but you can start or you can join anytime. So you don't have to like start at the beginning. You can jump in anytime. It's, while it's geared towards older adults, it's available for people of any age. And it's offered through a partnership with Santa Rosa JC. And the farmer's market continues to the end of September every Wednesday from 4:30 to 7:30 in La Plaza Park. This Saturday and Sunday is the annual Katati Accordion Festival in La Plaza Park from 9:30 to 8 p.m. each day. And then coming up in September is Creek Cleanup. That's going to be on September 20th from 10 a.m. to noon, as well as on that same day, we have Grub in the Hub, which is in La Plaza Park from 3 to 7, so it's that afternoon, followed by a movie in the park, which is going to be Ratatouille. And one other event just around the corner, August 23rd, in a partnership with Runner Park and Sonoma State University, there's like a Pokemon Go type game. It's called The Great Game. That's going to be on August 23rd with a kickoff at the SSU Squad. Tentatively 10 a.m., as I understand it, is the kickoff time in the quad where everyone can start the go. So it's like a mobile app, and you go to landmarks and answer riddles and get clues, and then move to the next thing. So with that, that's it. But I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Any questions?
On the Katati Fence Run on the 13th, I saw people could register, but it still says it's pending county approval. Do we know what the status is of the run?
Yeah, so so previously the council had seen it was the Christoph running fence, 5K, maybe 10K. Yeah, 5K, 10K. They've been working with so to answer your question, I don't know the approval status with the county, but they do have a traffic plan. They're working with CHP for the detours in the county part of the route. I was talking with our rec department this week, and they have a plan. So it seems like everything's moving forward. I haven't heard that there's any issues with getting encroachment. I think especially with CHP being in charge of the encroachment, I think the county would be fine, is my guess. Because I think it was actually the requirement that they're using CHP.
Any other questions? Okay, let's do council member reports. I'll start down at this end this time.
I attended my first Kids Day in Katati, first parade I've been in since high school. It was fun to throw candy. Also the chamber ribbon cutting for the golf 24/7. Attended that. That looks like a good facility for families. National Night Out, that looked very nice. I went to that for the first time as well. And then also Mike Thompson's Town Hall last week was very informative here in the facility. Also, just a note, on Thursday of this week, so in 2 days, there's a ribbon cutting at our library for a new art installation that was bought and funded by the Friends of the Library, and it's two Charlie Brown sculptures, one of Linus and one of Charlie Brown, that are there close to the library. And it's 4 o'clock Thursday if anyone would like to attend.
Great. Vice Mayor Lemus.
Okay, thank you. So I also went to Katati Kids Day, and I went to the ribbon cutting on July 17th, the golf 24/7 ribbon cutting. And then I went to the Mercy Wellness Lounge ribbon cutting on July 26th, July 31st, Sonoma Clean Power Geyser Tour, Regional Parks Foundation meeting August 1st, which there is a golf tournament on September 25th for Sonoma County Regional Parks, sponsored by Sonoma Clean Power, benefiting the regional parks, which there's more than 60 parks in the whole county. If anyone's interested, September 25th. I also went to Congressman Thompson's legislative update in Katati. Really good, a lot of great questions and information was given out. I went to Sonoma Clean Power meeting on the 7th of August, and I was appointed to the 3rd ad hoc to help recruit community advisory committee members. I'm also on the ad hoc for local small business support hub, and the other thing that we did do at Sonoma Clean Power is approved offering participation in Sonoma Clean Power to Lake County, Clear Lake, and Lakeport. So that offer is being made. Yesterday, I went to the Sonoma State commitment hearing, which was held by legislators and Sonoma State University president, staff, faculty, and students. And that was very interesting. It provided a lot of clarity. And we learned also that the CSU Chancellor's Office committed another 45 million towards Sonoma State University. So interesting. I'm hoping that those plans get off the ground and moving forward because that's what they need there at Sonoma State University. I went to a Cotati Chamber of Commerce meeting before this meeting, and so they did share a little information that this Sunday night is SSU Big Night at Sonoma State University from 6 to 9. And then August 26th, they're having the Seawolves Shop Local Fair from 11 to 1, which is local small businesses go there and talk about shopping local. And August 28th, there's a all multi-chamber mixer at Lula Burbank Center. So that's what I got. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I was out of town for most of the time between last meeting and this, and all my committees canceled their meetings. I was very glad we got to host Congressman Thompson and had such a great turnout with great questions there. Councilmember Harvey.
I too was out of town for a lot of the different events. Our LAFCO I came back to go to LAFCO and they canceled the meeting, so I didn't go to that. And the Waste Management Agency meeting was also canceled. However, I did go to my first Rotary meeting, and they were a great group of people. We had a wonderful presentation from Canine Companions, and they brought one of the dogs, and they also had a couple that transport the puppies to the airports. So all of the dogs that are in the program, they breed their own dogs, and then they have, I think the number is 6 different centers throughout the United States, and then they send them to those centers, and then volunteer people raise them for 17 months, and then they turn them in, and then they get placed with a professional trainer to train them further, depending upon what it is that they're going to do for a specific person. So they get very specific training. And then after that specific training, then the person that is receiving the dog, they come to Canine Companions for 2 weeks, and they get intensive training with the dog and the trainer. So it was really a great presentation. And last year they placed 900 dogs. And one of the other interesting things that I didn't know is, since they breed their own dogs, oftentimes during the young ages, they only have 50% of the dogs that actually make it. But while they're there and while they're looking at them, they are able to contact other organizations that. So for instance, the diabetes organization gets some of the dogs because they can tell some of them are very interested in scent. They work with some of the law enforcement agencies, again, because of scent. So some of the dogs that have been bred may not make good canine companions, but they work with other different partners to say, hey, we've got a pup here that may meet your programs. And so then those folks come in and kind of they end up sending dogs into other programs. So that was really quite interesting. And they're always looking for volunteers. So, and they just opened a new facility, a brand new state-of-the-art facility up in Santa Rosa, kind of behind the auto mall there. But it's a huge facility, but they need all kinds of volunteers. So anyways, on 8/8, I attended the Marin Sonoma Mosquito and Vector Control Executive Board, and we did some discussion of the director's performance appraisal and some other items. And that's all I have from meetings, but I want to let folks know that on 8/21 from 5:30 to 7:30 over in our community building, we will be partnering the Santa Rosa Plain GSA and the Petaluma GSA a meeting about, they call it the surface beneath you, and talking about groundwater and the things that we're doing and have done in the last 10 years. So that will be right over here. You have to register, but it's free. But that's from 5:30 to 7:30 on 8/21. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Thank you. We had a 2x2x2 safety meeting that was canceled due to illness. So that got rescheduled for Monday. So I'll be going. And then the WAC meeting, I have 4 things I wanted to share from the WAC meeting. First, we took the vote that I received direction on. I did vote no on the Marin Municipal contract renewal because of the issues that we discussed. Everyone else voted yes, except Windsor, who was absent. But that's fine. So it passed. And then I wanted to, the water. So at Lake Sonoma, when we have a lot of water in the reservoir, we're in what's called the flood control level, and the Army Corps of Engineers is in charge. And then when the water drops below, we're into the conservation level and the Sonoma water takes over. And we just went into Sonoma water control at the beginning of August, which is remarkably late in the year for that to happen, which is really good news about how much water we have right now. Also, there was a lot, we had a legislative update when the BBB, the big budget bill, whatever, when it passed, a lot of funding sources and programs that Sonoma Water taps into were cut. And they have been quietly and gradually all restored through other actions of Congress. So that was really good news. A lot of different things have been quietly put back in. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was that we have in addition to me representing the city of Cotati, we have a citizen, Neil Hancock, who regularly attends the Water Advisory Committee meetings, and he got along with a few other regular attendees, he got a shout out from Chair Natalie Rogers, thanking the citizens for their input throughout these meetings. So anyway, that's all I had to report.
Great, thank you. All right, that brings us to item 11A, a closed session. We'll have a closed session, which is a conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, name of case, Countryside MHP LLC versus City of Cotati. And is there any public comment on the closed session topic? There's nobody in the room, so we'll check with our Zoom attendees.
We have lost our Zoom attendees, Mayor Ford. Thank you.
Okay, so that'll end public comment on the closed session. If there's anything to report from the closed session, I will do that when we return, but we're now moving to closed session. Are we good? Okay, we're returning from closed session and there is nothing to report out of closed session. Was there information received after the agenda was posted?
Yes, there were several items. Everything received was posted to the HTML agenda and is available here in the chamber tonight. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So we are adjourning at 9:31.